Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Providence School Board meeting. Today is 3/19/25, and we are calling this meeting to order. We would love for everyone to please stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May take your seats. We will have the roll call. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Tyrell Stevens,
Present.
Najim Mahingabu, Melissa Hughes, Angel Newman, Michelle Fonts, Corey Jones, Mireya Mendoza, Jenny Mercado,
Present.
Heidi Silverio, Stephen Williamson.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We then will move over to item 1.4, superintendent comments.
Thank you. Good evening, President Stevens, school board members, and the many members of our Providence Public School community. Thank you for being here tonight. I appreciate your time and your commitment to supporting our students and Providence Public Schools. A couple of items I would like to cover today. One of them will be the survey words. I want to take this opportunity to encourage all families, students, and educators to participate in the survey work. This is the Rhode Island Annual Educational Survey. Your feedback is instrumental. It helps us understand what's working and where we need to improve as a community. The more responses that we receive, the better that we can address the many issues in our communities as well. We have already seen positive changes thanks to the feedback. For example, at West Broadway Middle School, students' perception on attendance importance has increased by 15%. When we used to ask students before what they think about being absent 1 or 2 days, they didn't think it was a big matter. Didn't matter. It was just 1 or 2 days. But explaining and teaching what that means and having many conversations, students are starting to understand that 1 day out of school is 1 day too many. We need students in school every day. Also, the perception of the families also increased by 21%. This kind of data helps us make real changes and benefits our students' outcomes. So this is really important. Survey work was open until March 31st. However, it has been extended until April 4th, 2025. So I encourage everyone to take a minute to fill it out, complete this form. Your voice matters, and your input will help us become a stronger school and a stronger district. Also, I would also like to share tonight about kindergarten. If you have a child who's 5 years old before September 1st, 2025, they are eligible for kindergarten registration. I encourage families to register before May 11th, 2025 to secure a spot. The process is pretty simple. Families can register through Skywork and visit our registration office at 325 Ocean Street. While every child will receive a spot in school, a placement, spots are assigned based on sibling attendance. What do I mean by that? If we have a family that has multiple siblings, we'll try to keep them as much as we can within one facility, not at different buildings. We know that has been a problem for parents going to multiple buildings, trying to drop off students. They'll be on time in one building, but they'll be late for the other one. So we're trying to do everything we can at the district level to keep the families together as well. So that's one of the things. And also the proximity for the neighborhood schools. So the earlier that you register, the better it is for the families. I would also like to share Eat, Play, Learn. I'm so excited. This is the 10th year of Eat, Play, Learn in Providence. I'm excited to share the Eat, Play, Learn. We're going to have an opportunity on Saturday, April 5th from 10 a.m. to 12 noon here at PCTA. So if you have any family members that are looking to join Eat, Play, Learn, please make sure, share it with the family, share it with students. We're going to be here. This is a great opportunity. It is not only an opportunity for Eat, Play, Learn, but it's also an opportunity for students who like sports, who like reading, hands-on activities. They're going to have many opportunities to do that through Eat, Play, Learn, but also for the older students who are ready to, who are seeking summer jobs, there will be opportunities for them there as well. When we look at attendance, I would like to share that we have made incredible progress in reducing the chronic absenteeism, bringing it down from 48.4% last year to 36.2% this year. So I want to give teachers a big round of applause, families and students for that. However, that was a 12 percentage point decrease from last year to this year. But overall, since the beginning of this initiative, we have dropped over 20 percentage points. And a big round of applause for that as well. This is a huge step in the right direction. We are now below pre-pandemic levels. Attendance, as we know, is one of the biggest factors in a child's academic success, and we're going to be committed and remind parents the importance of the chronic absenteeism and how students need to be in school every day, learning every day in every classroom. Also, through our FACE office, we continue to offer parent university workshops to help families navigate everything from cyber safety to school choices, even understanding the student's IEP. So we're offering that also through the parent engagement phase. The Rhode Island Attorney General Neuer and also Commissioner Infante Green issue a press release that's a joint guidance for school officials to safeguard the rights of Rhode Island students, regardless of their identity, gender, or sexuality. This guidance is also instructed to schools and diversity and equity and inclusion and accessibility programs in Rhode Island should not change until the recent executive action is settled. Providence Public Schools, in turn, receive that information, the release, and also put out the guidance based on the guidance that we received from RAI as well. I would like to share some student highlights. Khan Academy March Mania, Providence is dominating the Khan Academy March Mania competition, securing three spots out of the four top contests in leading and also leading the state in two. Over 6,000 Providence students have been participating in Khan Academy as part of our ongoing efforts to making sure that students are learning and supporting. So our students are leading that as well. So big round of applause for our students on that. Pi Day is academic excellence. Pi Day is March 14. Pi Day is an annual celebration of mathematical status and also observed, like I said, on March 14. Since the 3, 1, 4 are the first numerical figures, I would like to share some of the schools who celebrated Pi Day. We have Vartan Gregorian Elementary School, Bailey Elementary School, Webster Elementary School, Kazarian Elementary School, all host Pi festivity days for students. It's hands-on, and that was a great opportunity for them. We also have two middle schools, which were the Nathaniel Green Middle School and Roger Williams Middle School, also had Pi Day, and it's not Pi Day, we use math, they had hands-on learning experiences for those students as well. Now, we would like to celebrate some of our students once again. Is sports news. I want to say congratulations to the 2025 Middle School Playoff Tournament champions. On the court, DeSesto Middle School took home the girls basketball championship. Big round of applause for them. While Nathan Bishop Middle School secured the boys basketball championship. Big round for them as well. A big shout out to all of the student athletes, coaches, and the supporters. We can't forget about the supporters who are always there, whether they are teachers, parents, or just neighborhood partners who come in and support this. We want to recognize them as well. I would also like to do a special shout out and congratulations to Classical High School girls swimming team who won Division I swimming at Roger Williams University. This is an amazing accomplishment, going from a Division II to a Division I and coming home victorious. So let's give them another big round of applause. And lastly, I want to recognize Women History Month. Our communications department, thank you. Our communications department here at PPSD are highlighting females that attended PPSD, who are PPSD staff and graduated from Providence Public Schools. So we're recognizing them for Women History Month. They're being featured on social media as well as in our buildings to make sure when you walk by and you see one of the flyers and go to the main building, you're going to see all these amazing women who have done great things, not only as students, but now giving back to our community. And this is what it means to be part of the community, giving back from the community you came from as well. So once again, thank you all for being here, giving us the opportunity to share this day with you. And I'll turn it back over to President Stevens.
Thank you, Superintendent. We're going to be going to item 2.1. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Motion has been made by Mr. Mahigable, seconded by Secretary Fonts. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Any noes? Any abstentions? Motion passes. We're going to be going to motion 3.0, which is recognitions of celebrating classical high school swim team. I want to let you all know that I'm very proud of each of you. I can swim, but I don't go into water that's, higher than 6 feet. So that's a bold sport to definitely be a part of. So I want to congratulate you and congratulate the coach. I'm going to call up the Chief Communications Officer who will give us further guidance. Suzanne.
I'm getting there. Okay, we're going to call down our swimmers and have them come down and get a certificate from the superintendent and the school board president. First up is Maya Brooks. Maya, if you could just stay over here so we can get a picture of the whole team. Sadie Enright.
All right, Steve.
Kate Howlett.
All right, Kate. And the fellow.
Fiona Hughes.
All right. Go ahead, girl. Yeah.
Take one here and then one.
Come on, hurry up now. This is a good school board meeting. All right.
Stella Lokes. Stella Lokes.
Let's get Stella Lokes a big round of applause.
Madeline McCrane.
Yeah. All right. These are our students, y'all.
Did anybody see that?
Alexandra O'Sullivan.
Yeah. All right, girl. Look at our students. Look at them.
Abigail Reimer.
Big round for Abigail.
Azur Tabares.
School board's on fire tonight. I don't know.
Vivian Weinert.
Come on now, Viv. These are our students.
Nico Weinert.
Oh, yes.
And Coach Murray.
All right, coach.
Okay, girls, and if you could just have on this side and 4 of you on that side. Or maybe 5 and 5. My math isn't so great. Okay.
There we go.
Perfect. Are we holding them up?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Turn that one around. Oh. That would have been bad. And we should also recognize that they got the sportsmanship award. Do you have the trophy? I'll grab it.
We gotta get that.
While we get the trophy, Coach will explain what it's for.
So the trophy gets presented every year to one team. We've been nominated several times, but we never won it. So it gets picked by the officials. So officials make that presentation, and then it gets voted on by the coaches. So it's a big award for the kids. So I'm very proud of them, boys and girls.
There we go.
All right, everybody. On the count
Can we do number one?
on the count.
Yeah, number 1.
1, 2, 3, purple. Congratulations, class.
These are our students.
I'm speaking out of turn a little bit, but athletes, real quick, athletes, girls, swim team, I have been an athlete my whole life, and I have not had the honor of being able to win a championship, but I know the hard work that goes into that. So again, just congratulations, keep striving, keep breaking glass ceilings, keep bringing attention to Providence. Let's go.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we're going to head over to item 4.1, approval of the minutes from 12.16, 24. We're meeting on 12/16/24, 2/12/25, and then 2/26/25. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Motion made by Chairman Jones. Do I have a second? Seconded by Secretary Fonts. Any discussion? There being none, all signify by saying aye. Any nays? Any abstentions? The motion passes. All right. Do we have anyone here to speak on homeschool candidates? All right, Mr. Macatone.
All right, good evening. I'm presenting to you this evening our homeschool candidates for this month. They've met all the requirements of Rhode Island General Statute as it regards to homeschooling and our school board policy as it pertains to homeschooling. So I'm presenting those for approval to you this evening.
Do I have a motion to approve our homeschool candidates?
Motion.
Motion's been made by Secretary Fonts. Do I have a second? Seconded by Chairman Mahigable. Any discussion? All signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays, abstentions? The motion passes. Thank you. All right, we're going to go over to item 5.1, public comment right to be heard. Just want to clarify some things really quick. So each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. The public comment section shall last no more than 30 minutes unless the board votes to extend it. Community members should feel welcomed and assured their issues will be heard by both the school administration and the school board. And then we'll make sure as a board that we follow up during future meetings, okay? I am going to have Madam Clerk that is going to call up the first speaker on tonight. Madam Clerk?
Brandy Tucker.
Hey, Ms. Tucker. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening. I'm Brandy Tucker. Nice to see you all again. I'm a non-binary 5th grade ESL teacher at Webster Avenue Elementary. I'm sure you remember last month when I was here to speak with you. Last time I spoke about the statistics of queer educators in the States. And today I decided it's probably a good idea for me to speak about myself. So I moved to Providence 3 years ago from Santa Cruz, California. I had never lived on the East Coast, always the West, and I wanted to see what it was like. Just that time in my life, it made it perfect for me to make that change. So I came out to Providence in May of 2022, excuse me, and to visit Connecticut because I had applied to a bunch of Connecticut schools and I had several interviews lined up. But I fell in love with Providence. I fell in love with the cobblestone streets, the diversity in the city, the kindness of the people everywhere I turned. And so I went home and I applied to Providence and canceled all my Connecticut interviews. Within a week, I had an offer from Webster Avenue Elementary and I accepted it. I was super excited to work for a small community school, knowing that my goal was to be part of that community, to build that community. And that's what I've done for 3 years. Since being here, I've been a member of my ILT team, my SIT team. I was part of the Culture and Climate Committee until it dissolved. I've coached Girls on the Run for 2 seasons. I'm currently coaching my 2nd season of Webster basketball. It didn't exist until I arrived. I've taught in after-school tutoring programs, vacation break academies, summer school. I go to watch my students play sports or dance. I've organized and planned the 5th grade promotional ceremonies and celebrations since I've been here. I've served on the district's Equity Advisory Council. I've been a member of the Providence Teaching for Black Lives study group for 3 years. Last year, I helped develop elementary curriculum for Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action, and I presented 3 PDs on it for educators in this district. I was a presenter and a panelist at the Equity Conference that we put on. I'm a union co-delegate in my building. I was elected by union membership to go to the American Federation of Teachers Convention in Houston this last July. I'm also a founding member of PVD
30
Corps.
seconds.
Besides all of this, I have good evaluations. I am currently ranked highly effective with about a 380 score out of 400. How am I not qualified to be a teacher in my district, in my school? It makes no sense. Either it's because I'm non-binary or my principal does not like me and my work in the union. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tucker.
M. Sluter.
All right, so I wasn't going to talk about myself too much this time, but something I want to talk about was a program that I was placed into for this school year.
Can you speak into the mic?
Sorry, I hate these things. So My first year of teaching was challenging. I struggled to receive basic supports, but I did it anyway, and I'm very proud of myself. And it sucked because veteran teachers around me kept telling me not to expect to get anything higher than a developing on my final effectiveness rating. So when that happened, I didn't think much of it. This is what I was told to expect. No one told me that I could contest that until this year. And so I was placed into what is called the Peer Assistance and Review, or PAR program. So in our contract, 8-13.7, the Peer Assistance and Review, our contract states that this is a program that will provide intensive support to tenured teachers in need of intervention. And this was not my experience with this program. I mean, I found it helpful because it was nice to have like more semi-regular feedback, but it was not the intensive help that I was expecting to receive as a new teacher. We discussed what I wanted to work on. She would give me my glows and grows if I didn't have to cover another class, and that's kind of where it ended. It was simple and quick when I expected more in-depth. And that's kind of another problem I have is there's 3 ratings you can get: is this positive release, this continuation, or this negative release. Where positive, obviously you meet the standards. Continuing, they want you to stay in the program a bit longer. Negative release, you're done. It can be like up to a dismissal. And in the contract, it states that no recommendation will be based on fewer than 15 of these visits. I did not receive all 15 of these visits. I only got 8 of these sessions, and I was told I would not be getting all 15 due to financial reasons. So I can't even get in contact with her now because she's also out on leave. And so I didn't receive 7 of these 15 sessions that our contract states are required before a verdict can be made about my rating. And I feel like it's unfair that I receive like this rating on my effectiveness when I have been unable to complete this program, not of my own volition. And when it comes down, like, I would like to see policy changed around the implementation of this program for teachers, considering
30 seconds.
I'm being non-renewed on this aspect of desire. So when we're qualified, you've placed me into this program. I haven't gotten a chance to complete it. Why is this decision not coming after my full completion? See how I'm doing, then see am I still unqualified after I've received the support. And there should be guardrails for this. This should be something that is considered for non-renewals. Okay, you're in danger of this being ineffective. We put you through the program. If you are still ineffective, then we consider this non-renewal.
Thank you.
Lindsay Paiva.
Hey, Lindsay. All is well. As soon as you get started, you have 3 minutes, okay?
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. I'm Lindsay Paiva. I use she, her pronouns. I teach at Webster Ave Elementary, teach 3rd grade. We had the day off today, unexpectedly, so that was nice. First, I want to thank you, Night Team, for bringing the resolution. And I think the community came in loud and clear last month about what our expectations are. You know, we had almost 50 people testifying, 100 letters of support, and a lot of people filling the rooms. I just want to say of the people, of all the teachers and staff at Webster, I'm the only person who wrote a letter of support for Brandy publicly and was able to put my name on it. So I just want that to be stated for the record, not because I want a trophy, but because I want to illuminate the fear that teachers have. Everyone was too afraid, had to opt for anonymity, or others told Brandy that they love them but couldn't risk writing a letter because of the climate at Webster. So I'm going to take some time to talk about Brandy tonight. I know last time I didn't have any time. So when Brandy started at Webster, from the beginning, I could tell that they were special. And not only were they bringing years of pedagogical experience from California, but also had an impressive background in like supporting multilingual learners, and we really need that at our school. And seeing Brandy interact with students in any capacity is really a privilege. You know, they mentioned all those extracurriculars, but really I hope that everyone in this room has the opportunity to experience it once in their lifetime, but really seeing them teach is like something else entirely. So their depth of mathematical knowledge, understanding of the standards, and also just like meeting students where they are, but then building this like staircase of love and compassion and warm demanding to get them where they need to be is really a gift. And Brandy already talked about all of the ways they've revolutionized fifth grade experience at Webster. It's really incredible. Like, did I enjoy the staff versus student kickball? No, publicly, put it on the record. I did not. But like these are the traditions that Brandy has started that have really shifted things, like unbelievable transition ceremonies and practices to get the kids really ready for middle school. But within Brandy's story is the larger picture of sort of like what's going on at Webster, and I want to tell the story of Webster because it's my home. I've been there for 7 years. When I started, we were like this close to a 4-star school, and that's why I chose it. It's like the best. I wanted to be at the best, you know. We had a 14-year veteran principal with a lot of teaching experience in elementary, and then came, you know, the great principal swap of 2020 when 8 elementary principals were moved 2 weeks before reopening with COVID. And from then on, like we've had a leadership void at Webster. We have leadership that is brought us from almost a 4-star school to a 1-star school. Teachers have remained consistent, but you know, the shuffling around of administrators who aren't prepared for the job at hand is really a big issue. And I would urge the board to investigate, you know, why there are some principals who've been in 4 schools this year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Daniel Kittredge.
Hope you're doing well. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Dan Kittredge, and I'm a Providence resident. I'm here to speak in support of the resolution calling for the rescinding of the recent non-renewals. And first, I'd like to thank the board for listening to the people who turned out in huge numbers and waited for hours to testify at last month's meeting. Today, when we have more elected officials than ever in this country flagrantly ignoring the voice of the people, it's refreshing to see somebody actually listen. There are 3 reasons that these non-renewals fly in the face of everything Providence schools are supposed to be about. First off, these non-renewals disproportionately target queer and non-binary teachers at a time when these communities are under vicious attacks from bigots in Washington and around the country. Providence is a city that embraces and defends our LGBTQ community. So for PPSD to target these teachers as easy prey for being fired because of their identity is disturbing. Second, these non-renewals disproportionately target outspoken union members, organizing to improve conditions across the district. Providence is not a city of union busters. We know unions provide good jobs, and the teachers' working conditions are our students' learning conditions. So any attack on union organizers is an attack on our students as well. Finally, many of these non-renewals target teachers, librarians, and other staff in positions which PPSD has struggled to fill and has left vacant for months or years. The idea that these teachers must be fired to be replaced with better candidates when the district can't or won't fill existing vacancies in similar positions is simply not credible. Everyone in the district office claims to want to improve student outcomes, and I have no reason not to believe that. And yet when given the chance, they have jumped to fire beloved teachers from positions that we desperately need more teachers for, not fewer. So for these reasons, these non-renewals stand in direct contradiction to everything our school district is supposed to be about. We should be celebrating the diversity of our teachers, holding it up as an example to our students that no matter who you are, you can achieve great things just like they do every single day. We should be supporting the efforts of those union members who take the extra time out of their already overfilled schedules to fight for more resources and better conditions for Providence's kids. And we should be excited to have celebrated award-winning librarians like Sam Wallace in this district, not rushing to give them a pink slip
30 seconds.
and leave yet another group of students without a librarian and without their favorite teacher. These non-renewals are attacks on the LGBTQ community of Providence. They are a clear attempt at union busting, and all in service of making conditions at Providence schools worse. These non-renewals never should have been issued, and frankly, the process by which they were needs far more community input. If the current process allows for the district to continue to make decisions wildly out of
Time.
step, we should change it. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Sam Wallace.
Hey, Sam. Yeah, 3 minutes.
Great. This is what I do every morning. Hi, y'all. Sam Wallace, they, them pronouns, and the current Del Sesto Middle School librarian. Really sad to be here. I was out 2 days this week with strep, y'all, and I had a fight in my classroom. So clearly there is at least one less qualified educator here. And it also shows that without consistent educators, your kids are getting beat up. Please stop non-renewing teachers. Your kids are unsafe. We try to keep them safe, then we get fired. And all the different ways that I'm so angry about this, I'm so mad for the disrespect shown for our Providence students through this process. What a waste of our educators' time. We could be spending planning or grading or doing other things. What disregard for our Providence students that year after year, students have to fight to keep their teachers, year after year. I talked to an educator that was non-renewed in 2004. This is not a new process. This has been happening. We do not have guardrails. We need them. We need community input. We need an understanding of who makes these decisions and why. So we've been needing that. I have kids who ask to be in library, and they ask, will I be in library next year? Kids ask to be in Brandy's class. Kids ask to be in M's class. And now we get to tell them, we don't know. Who knows? We'll see. And with a school district has like a 10% staff turnover each year, why wouldn't the district want to keep us? We are dedicated educators. Right now, I would like to advocate for a view of evidence. I'm happy to do that in an executive session with school board members. I know that the process has changed. They want us to meet with RIDE. I'm happy to meet with y'all. I sent you 15 pages of great things that I did. Feel free to read them. I was happy to send them. Let's see what else. We need to look at exit interview data, y'all. They ask us exit interview questions. We've never seen that data. Please ask for that data. My non-renewal could have been for a number of reasons, but as Lindsay talked about, there has been administrative shifts, both at the school level, but also at the district level. As a librarian, my evaluation includes 6 additional pages of library-specific work. I have never been evaluated by a school librarian. So I'm evaluated by people who don't know what my job is. My district leadership has never been librarians, and yet they are requiring us to do programs without supplies, without time, without any additional support or resources. For example, I asked my school leadership to weed my collection. Weeding is when you look through the books and decide, do I want to keep this book from 1997? Probably not, right? I want to donate that or give that away. I was told no. That is directly in contrast with my evaluation requirement 3.3, knowledge resources. We need the school board member to look at policies around school and district admin. As I've spoken about as well, I am not being evaluated by folks who have my experience level. With the current demands of my job, instead of checking out books during my school day, I check out books at night. I take pictures of them on my phone. I have the school library open for checkout 3 hours a week at most. And even then I'm taking on vacancies. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Callie Rockwell.
Hey. All right, 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Kaylee Rockwell, and I'm a social studies teacher at Hope High School. First, I would like to thank Nightjean for introducing the resolution you will hear tonight to rescind the non-renewals of our queer educators. As we all heard last month, these educators are beloved and renowned members of their school communities who deserve to have their jobs protected. Losing them would be a tremendous loss to our district, and I urge the board to pass this resolution tonight. And I urge the board to pass this resolution not just because excellent teachers like Brandy, Sam, and M should be protected, although they should, but also because it is long past the time for the district to begin regaining the trust of the community. As the narrative around the return to local control continues to intensify, the first and biggest priority of the board should be to promote transparency and accountability to those of us who are most invested in the success of our schools. As you heard from students, parents, educators, and teachers, especially those and community members last month, protecting high quality teachers, especially those who have been marginalized, is incredibly important. It's your job to take that feedback and show us that we can trust you with it. It is your job to act. Of course, passing this resolution is only the first step. The district has lacked transparency and accountability since the takeover began, and it will take more than one act to regain the community's trust. The good news is that listening to students, families, and educators will likely shed light on the kinds of solutions we need to improve our schools. A good example of this can be seen in star ratings. From my research, there are currently 15 schools in Providence with a 1-star rating, the lowest possible score. Of those 15 schools, 6 had a rating of 2 stars or higher in the 2018-2019 school year, indicating that their performance has declined. Additionally, of those 15 schools, 7 have seen declines in English proficiency, and 6 have seen declines in math proficiency in that same time frame. Of course, we can blame COVID for some of these declines, and that factor is impossible to not consider. But in addition to failing star levels, 8 Providence schools have been identified as being in the bottom 5% of the state of Rhode Island since the takeover began. And we continue to hear from students, parents, and teachers that our schools are not meeting their needs. Some of the problem is definitely us. So what can we blame low star ratings on? Many things, I'm sure, but one fact that is rarely considered is administrative turnover, as people have mentioned tonight. Of the 15 schools with 1-star ratings, only 1 has had the same principal since the 2018-2019 school year. Some of the schools, including Isaac Hopkins, Carnivale, and Mount Pleasant, have had as many as 4 principals during that time. How can school communities plan, build, and improve when there is such instability? The disruption seems to be the point. We disrupt schools when we move their administrators around without warning, when we non-renew their strongest teachers without cause, and when we close, merge, and move them without community input, as what happened with 360. We need to build from a strong foundation, and one way to begin is to listen to the community, account for their needs, and ensure that we have the stability they need to make the changes they want to see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anna Cooperman.
How are you? That's good. All right. As soon as you start, you have 3 minutes.
Ta-da. Thank you. 3 things. I want to start with Brandy and Sam. I just left a Teach for Black Lives Matter for Black Lives in Schools meeting where I was sitting next to Brandy, and she's an amazing educator. And I just want to put that forward. And Sam has been helping me understand the know your rights stuff around ICE as I've been getting more and more nervous and sending me information, which I find incredibly helpful. So I just want to encourage the resolution to reinstate them. There's 2 things that happened this week that I'd like to just very quickly talk about. There were infrastructure trials for the RICAS at the elementary and middle schools, maybe in the high schools as well. I'm sorry, my name is Anna Cooperman. I teach at Classical High School. I have 2 students at Classical High School as well. 2 of my kids go there. So it was really, this is hearsay, and maybe you guys can look into it a little bit, but the infrastructure trials for RICAS that are in the past have been generally to see if the technology works and to help kids understand how the tools on the exam work. So it's like, it's not the full test. You sit down, you do a little practice, and then you go about your day. But in the middle schools and elementary schools this week, kids were sat down and they were asked to take the entire exam, sometimes without any of their accommodations for MLL kids and for special ed kids. And just that amount of time to ask kids to sit 3 hours in some cases, and then to have a shortened day, a shortened educational day for the rest of that time. And then to ask them again to do that another day this week, and then to ask them to do that again for the real tests, right, for 3 days or 2 days in the coming weeks. To me, that's just too much testing for these little people. And it also, I mean, it leaves an incredible taste of I hate school in your mouth for them. And I think we just need to relook at all of the tests that we're giving. And I understand, you know, there's this whole search for data, but honestly, it feels like it's a search, especially if this is data, the infrastructure test, it's a search for failure is what it is. And just very quickly, we still, as a teacher, and someone who is really, you know, concerned around what's happening in our world around ICE and the 3 various people with green cards and H-1 visas who have been picked up, I still don't feel
30
like
seconds.
I don't know what is happening at our schools, at my school level, what the plan is, and I want to know, and I want my students to feel safe there. I just want I want to have a meeting with everybody where the administration is saying you're safe here and we love you and we're going to keep you safe. And your teachers are going to keep you safe, and that's what we're putting forward to you. Not nothing, because we've gotten nothing. I haven't heard anything, and it makes me feel unsafe, and I know that it makes my students feel unsafe, and I'm really hopeful that something is going to change around that soon. Thank you.
Time.
Thank you.
Emily Grace LeMay.
Hey, Emily. Please read your name into the record. 3 minutes.
Is this okay? Okay. My name is Emily Grace LeMay. I am the manager at South Providence Library, part of the 9 community libraries of Providence. Thank you for letting me speak today. Thank you for listening last time I spoke too. And thank you for listening in general. I wish to affirm my support for these educators and for their colleagues as well, a disproportionate number of whom also represent the underrepresented as illuminated by Brandy's number crunching during their time speaking at the last meeting. I really appreciated Board President Stevens' advocacy to move public comment higher up on the agenda to allow for students, teachers, and families to be heard and then get home to their homework and their lives. That was really cool, but I wish it had been more honored. As a former actual secretary and as a former secretary for the Rhode Island Library Association, I would also like to comment on how a meeting's agenda reflects an organization's priorities. It feels as though the things that you know the public want to be briefed on and discuss with you are being buried towards the bottom of the agenda and after public comment. This also forces students and teachers to either stay late or to leave, review the recording later, and then come back again the following month in order to be fully informed and fully heard. That said, sitting on the floor in a hot and crowded room last time while listening to an hour's worth of expert testimony about how essential it is to have dedicated teachers when it comes to figuring out and mitigating chronic absenteeism did add some fuel to my fire. So in a roundabout way, I'm glad I had to stay for that. To end on a positive note, I am happy to see that you'll be reviewing the resolution. So thank you, Nightjane, for that. And I am cautiously hopeful about the human resources overview that I see listed on the agenda as well. I was also very happy to see so many thoughtful responses to Steve Alquist's questions about diversity and intellectual freedom. Please carry this thoughtfulness and compassion with you into your continued review of this situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Patrick Shelton.
Hey, Patrick. Please read your name in the record. You have 3 minutes.
How you doing? Good evening. Thank you, members of the school board, for allowing me to speak this evening. I'm Patrick Shelton, a 5th grade teacher at the Dr. Martin Luther King Elementary School here in Providence. I'm here this evening to discuss the subject of testing in schools and to provide a glimpse of some of the things that are happening. I just want to make you aware of some of the policies that have been enacted and what those policies look like in the classroom. I want to preface my comments by stating that I fully understand the enormous weight that state testing has in shaping the narrative about our district. People in positions of power within the district must feel significant pressure to show improved results on state assessments. However, this year, PPSD has mandated more frequent writing assessments, which on its face is not necessarily a bad thing, as I believe we should all want to improve our students' ability to write. However, those assessments are administered on Canvas, a learning platform that is honestly the most user-unfriendly I've ever used and that my 5th grade students despise. Students as young as 7 are required to type their responses on Canvas. Moreover, I have copies, I'm going to give them later, of a 2nd grade writing prompt and the RICAS rubric that teachers were given to grade their writing. Think for a second about how would you provide feedback to a 7-year-old using a RICAS rubric? I have a copy of the prompt for the rubric for all of you. Please take a moment to look at it when you get a chance, and please pay close attention to the actual prompt itself. It's not the only example I could point to. In 5th grade, we were required to use RICAS rubrics to grade writing projects from our American Reading Company curriculum, which had its own rubrics. Naturally, the RICAS rubric didn't align with the unit project, whereas the ones from ARC did. While students received a grade for their writing, it lacked specifics that could have provided appropriate feedback to help them grow as writers. I close this evening by confirming my strong support for the district's goal of improving student writing skills. However, part of what will help students grow as writers are providing them with engaging writing tasks and timely feedback. A RICAS-focused writing program is as uninspiring as it is dull, and it's not what our students need to help them grow. I know that I speak for other teachers when I say that we would love to be consulted on how to create an engaging writing program in our schools. Wouldn't it make perfect sense for district leaders to collaborate with teachers on this project? I urge you, Superintendent Montanez, members of the school board, help us find ways to collaborate on this important task. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelton.
Judith Dixon.
Hey, Judith. Please read your name in the record. You have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me now? Okay, good. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm not really a public speaker. I get very nervous, but I wanted to talk tonight because, I have a lot of concerns with what is going on nationally and how that's being reflected here. I did come tonight to thank Knight Jean for his resolution to halt the non-renewals of the LGBTQ plus educators. And I just wanted to ask that any future decisions regarding non-renewals are based on just and transparent causes and are limited, given the huge impact they have on educators, their careers, and on the students they teach, and given the current educator shortage. I know the district wants to attract diverse, qualified, and effective teachers. I actually read that in an email yesterday. And so I do think these non-renewals send like a chilling message to all who might be interested in working here, that you could be terminated and be given very little explanation as to why. And that could impact you in your future career because you would have to say that you were non-renewed when you were applying for other jobs. So I hope that all board members will agree with Knight Jean's resolution. I also just read that there are 465 probationary teachers right now in Providence, and that 17 were non-renewed, which is a very small percentage. That's about 3%, I think, of the probationary teachers. However, in the population, there's about 1.6% of the people are non-binary, and yet so if there's 1.6% of the population are non-binary, then if you look at it, if 1.6% of the population are non-binary, then there should be about in those probationary teachers, there should be about 7 of them are non-binary if you did the math of 1.6. and 3 of them have been non-renewed. So that is 42% of the 7 non-binary teachers in those probationary,
30 seconds.
3 of 7 is a big percentage. I also wanted to talk tonight also about immigration. I know Anna brought this up too. I am very terrified right now with what is happening with immigration and ICE. I did want to say thank you to the superintendent for his letter about this and for the meeting on the 26th. It was helpful to hear what the district was doing, but I also feel we are not getting training. I have not been trained. I am getting varied reports about levels of training that are happening and not happening.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judith.
TJ Beatrice.
Hey, TJ. Please read your name in the record. You have 3 minutes.
Hello. I've written something here. Thank you, members of the board, Superintendent Alvarez. I appreciate being provided the opportunity to speak here tonight. My name is TJ Beatrice, and I currently have 3 daughters in the Providence school system, with my youngest being a 6th grader at Nathan Bishop Middle School. I'm here tonight to look for some help and understanding with the current principal situation at Nathan Bishop. There are a number of us in the community who have noticed the school is just not operating well, and we do not currently understand the reasoning behind the current principal, Mrs. Jackson's absence. There seems to be this rotation of different administrative folks moving in and out of the building while kids are being let in to light off fireworks and fistfights are being shared across TikTok. I am sure the current staff is overwhelmed and the revolving door principal is not helping. Unfortunately, hearing tonight, it sounds like this seems to be a problem across the district. While I appreciate and respect the need for privacy with certain items, there is certainly a lot of uncertainty and instability. I'm here asking for a little bit of transparency or at least resolution, or both, with the current situation. Middle school is hard enough for our kids, and I really think a consistent, strong, steady hand in charge is sorely being missed. Ms. Jackson is a beloved and respected leader at Bishop. Having had multiple kids go through that school, I've witnessed the transformation firsthand during her tenure. She leads by example with her hard work and dedication to the school. She's recruited many of the excellent teachers during a national and regional teacher shortage, but most importantly, she has earned the respect of those teachers, her peers, and the students, our kids. I get it. You know, things are tough right now. We got the $6 eggs and a pending property tax hike. We're all being asked to do more with less. But the safety and well-being of our children must remain our top priority. Today it may be about Bishop, but tomorrow it may be about Green or Del Sisto or Hope or Kennedy or Webster. As a parent, I'm here tonight trying to do my best, to do my part, and know there are a number of other parents and other members in the community willing to do theirs. What I'm asking is help from all of you to provide leadership, stability, and consistency for all of our kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Farida Alum Huda.
Hey. Please read your name in the record. You have 3 minutes.
Can you hear? Yeah, okay. Hi, my name's Farida Alamhuda, and I reside in Providence. And today I am reading on behalf of a community member, Teresa Watson Tracy, and these are her words. As a Providence resident, parent, and community member, I have never felt unsafe or unwelcome. Why would I? I don't expect our students to feel unwelcome or unsafe. However, after reading about the recent events called non-renewal of teachers, which is nothing more than terminations, I am shocked. Also, I'm very dissatisfied with the actions of the Providence Public Schools and their administration, the Rhode Island Department of Education, and the commissioner, as well as the city of Providence and its leadership, for their deafening silence. No one wants to hear this is a personnel matter, because the commonality shared by the only 3 teachers being fired is not private or confidential. They are part of the LGBTQ community and active Providence teachers, union and PVD core members. Furthermore, the recent articles and communications highlighting their education, employment roles, extracurricular activities for the benefit of their students, professional pursuit of graduate education in ESL and other areas, and glowing reports from their peers and students make this a very public matter. It should be public while you have the power to recommend the reversal of such actions for our students and their families. Also of equal importance, what kind of message are you sending to education majors and young educators? Recruitment has never been so low, nor have numbers of those entering teaching programs. How can we expect to attract and retain teachers year after year as we throw away teachers after investing in them, only to fire them before tenure? Again, I say, what are our students thinking and how are they feeling? None of us can even imagine. If these 3 highly qualified public school teachers can be tossed aside, so can our students. Why should our students feel safe being part of the LGBT community, organizing to get out the vote,
30
to
seconds.
fight racism, or defending themselves or their friends in the current climate of hate against immigrants, refugees, or the undocumented? I implore you, Providence School Board, to intervene in support of these young educators. Make your newly elected and appointed voices count for our students.
Thank you. Really quick, Madam Clerk, do we have 2 more, right? We're just going to go through the 2 more and then we'll move on, but we are past the 30 minutes. So can I make a motion to suspend the 30-minute time limit for public comment? Motion has been made by Secretary Fons. Is there a second? Seconded by Dr. Williamson. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Any nays, abstentions? All right, the motion passes. Thank you.
Buchanan?
Hey, Joe. Please read your name in the record. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, get started here. Should be interesting. Hello, my name is Joseph P. Buchanan. I'm the president of the Black Political Action Education Committee, also of the Black PAC and of the Funds of Political Black Progress. I've noticed tonight that I haven't seen any black teachers or administrators come up here to speak. And I was just curious if they didn't have a problem, or if they did have one, they would be too scared to be fired. But I would also like to thank the school board here for opening up this place to all of our parents. Even though there's not as many as the last time, it is showing that the school board is listening to the community. And I appreciate that. Another thing that's on my mind is, where are the black and brown community? They're not here at this table speaking for their children. And that's another thing that scares me. When we don't have ours speaking up for ours, I wonder if our people are really committed as the school board is committed to our children. Because I see the school board has made changes for us to come in here and speak in a bigger building. And yet we have less people when they was crying about open space. So I thank you for that. Another thing I would like to talk about is the black history, the black and brown histories in our school. Because I know that curriculum is coming up. And with Mr. Donald Trump, our Republican stupid president, I believe that we should be standing up collectively as a unit and talking about what this president is trying to do to our country. I mean, we got a school board that is second to none, in my opinion. And only because they have listened to what the community, the teachers, and the students wanted. There is no reason why our students should be arrested for being protested. for protesting. I mean, up here is leadership. When are you going to show your strong leadership? You've shown your leadership, but I want to see the strength of this body. Come out here and tell our community to show up to support our teachers. We claim we love our teachers. We claim we want our teachers. I don't see the support for our teachers, in my opinion. It's not about color. It's about our teachers. And if our union is not strong enough, then we need to get rid of the union
30
president.
seconds.
Because I'm not here to play. I'm about action. And if you guys up here are not about action, or if you teachers back there are not about action, then don't be here talking. I'm here to get things done. I'm not here to make friends, because that's not what I'm here for. I'm not a friendly guy. I'm a guy that's about action and wants to get things done, and I want to support my superintendent. God bless you. I'm out. I won't use no profanities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buchanan.
God bless you, by the way.
Jair Ascensao.
Yes, hello. Tell me at 1 minute, please. My name is Jair Ascensao. You can call me Jair. I'm a local farmer. I love agriculture. One of the things that I'm here to speak about is I want to see our students getting chances to touch the soil this spring and summer. I want to see it happen every year, and I want to make sure that people who live in urban environments are given access to understand they are natural creatures in a natural world. I'm somebody that wasn't given that opportunity. I had to find it later on in life, and I want to make sure that as a young person, I'm able to express myself, especially in a situation where people are being labeled as having mental illness, ADHD, all these things, when, as you know, people who are young and people who are older have energy, they have ideas, they have creativity, and being stuck in classrooms does not always allow that to be expressed. One of the things that helps that happen and helps people feel comfortable in themselves is being outside. And if we don't do this for our children, they will live virtual lives online, on YouTube, on TikTok, and never get a chance to experience other things. If we don't do this for them, we won't see people with strength. We will see a new generation of weak, unable to speak people, and we will watch more as the leaders continue to tyrannize us. Please think about agriculture as a way to express yourself emotionally and creatively. Okay, on the other note that I have today, Ride and Angelica Infante Green. I really do not like her, and I do not like what's been happening. I've been around for a long time. I even worked with Tyrell a few years ago in the AAG group with the Young Voices. We've done a lot of things to try to take care of our students, and yet we still don't have a youth advisory committee. We don't have a parent advisory committee. We don't have votes. That these students are not stupid. They have plenty of ideas. You can't, at 6 years old, a child can have incredible ideas. So how are you going to deny 15, 16, and 17-year-olds the opportunity to judicialize their own people? That doesn't make any sense. And especially when it's in the hands of a person who is afraid to come out in public. Like I said, I like agriculture. I'm going to use a wonderful analogy. There are rats that live in a lot of different locations. They hate sunlight because sunlight allows them access to predators, and they don't like to be outside. The moment they come outside, things that don't like them will attack, and that is how Angelica Infante Green treats the public. She
30
is
seconds.
afraid of the public, and I really do not like that. Please fix this.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, is that the last?
That concludes public comment.
All right, thank you. I know we had gotten some written comments. I want Secretary Fonch just to, just give an overview on some of the things that she had seen.
Hey everyone. So we got a whole folder of support letters for our teachers. And reading through them, what I pulled out, well, first and foremost, I want to say thank everyone for showing up. That's it. Thank you for showing up for our teachers who are here. What I read in these things is just to reiterate some of the things that were said. It sounds like we need, and we did, right after that school board meeting, several members emailed to ask for the process of the non-renewals. What does that evaluation look like? We want that information. We want to see it. We also asked for the specific evaluations of those 17 non-renewal teachers. So please know we did hear you and we did act instantly. It just takes, it's taken a little bit of time. So we are calling for that evaluation process. We want to know what it is. Also, it sounds like through these letters, we need a call for the evaluation of PAR and how that's being implemented. Also, SLU and SOO needs to be reevaluated and how it's being implemented. So we will call for those processes to be brought to us so we can understand them and make sure that they are equitable and our teachers are being evaluated fairly so that they have the opportunity to grow and be better for our students. And then the last thing, just like in last month's meeting, what I'm hearing is a call for transparency. In these letters, there's a call for transparency too, with the processes, with the evaluations, and just with the decisions. So just know we hear you and we have and will continue to ask for this information and advocate on your behalf.
Thank you, Secretary Fonts. All right, we're going to move over to item 6.0, which is school board member comments. I just want to let the board know that this item is to recognize accomplishments within the school community, announcements of interest to the school community, assess meeting expectations, and request information for future board meetings and discussions. I'll kick it off today by sharing just, letting everyone know that this is going to be the year of we. We are all, in fact, going to try our best to come together as a board, bringing in students, families, teachers in the community to be a part of this process. It's going to take a village in order to get there. So we will work side by side and try to work side by side as a board with our families, teachers, youth groups, nonprofit organizations, private businesses to support student success on every level. Your voices matter. We will make sure students, teachers, and families have a real say in shaping the future of our schools through working groups and task force and try to drive a real change. Stronger schools, stronger city, PPSD. As we know, we've lost, I think it's been about like 4,000 students since the takeover, but we're committed in rebuilding that trust, making sure that Providence Public Schools becomes a first choice place for all of our students and families, something we're going to try to do as a board. Also, I want to also mimic that, I got a computer here, so I'm sorry, but I don't want to miss anything. We don't want to have any empty promises. We don't want to conduct that anymore. We want to try to focus on real change. We want to make sure that we see student achievement, that we're closing opportunity gaps as a district so that every child has a shot towards success here in Providence. Community school strategy. We will make sure that every school is a hub of support and opportunity, providing families with the resources they need. And last but not least, we want to modernize, have a high quality learning spaces. We want to continue to work to provide a 21st century learning environment that inspires and prepares students for the future here in Providence. So I just want to let the board know, I want to let the community know, I want to let the superintendent know and your team that together we will, in fact, try to make change as a board because we want to make sure that we work together so that all of our students are able to see success. Thank you. Thank you. Is there any other school board comments on today? Mr. Buchanan, you're disrupting my meeting.
I just want to shout out what's going on at Mount Pleasant High School. Rich Norris is the assistant principal over there. Let's give him a round of applause because he's literally changing the narrative of Mount Pleasant High School right now. I see him post all the time. He gets a lot of community involved. That's the type of Providence school we need. Those are the leaders we need in our schools for our students. So I just want to give a big public shout out to what's going on over there at Mount Pleasant High School and Rich Norris for sure.
Thank you, Secretary Fonts. Any other board members have? Chairman Mahigable?
I want to thank our community member for coming and supporting these resolutions. Just a quick, thank you. Just a quick comment. These resolutions and is calling right to hold this non-renewal immediately, and also like asking right to conduct and the district to conduct a review to ensure just and equitable decision making. And thank you again for coming. You came to the last meeting, and we listened to you, and we are here for you.
Wait a second. Let me say. Wait a second, Corey. Thank you, Ms. Mahigable. Chairman Jones.
Hello? All right.
There you go.
I just want to say thank you to everyone that came out and testified. I think it's really important to share like policy changes that we can make. And I want to encourage you all, thank you for that. And I want to encourage you all to join us in those future policy meetings so you can support us all the way through making these changes, because we want to ensure that no teacher ever has to go through that again. No teacher that is doing everything that they're supposed to do. So it's really important that we change the process so teachers who aren't as great of organizers as you all don't have to go through that in silence. And then I also want to comment on Jair. I know that in my day job, me and him are working on some of the agriculture stuff. And I substituted at Alvarez High School, and it was tough because some of the systemic barriers made it hard for us to even take the kids out in the grass. It was built on a toxic, land, and it was the heat of COVID, and we couldn't take kids outside. We couldn't take them, like anywhere but a hot parking lot, right? And so it's like we have some real systemic barriers with allowing our kids to have learning spaces that is more than just in a classroom. And it dates far back is what I learned from the teachers in that building, that they were advocating to not have that school built there, and folks went forward with it anyway. And then lastly, I just want to say that Jair also had some comments about the parent advisory committee, the student advisory committee, and I think that some of the challenges with the school takeover has been just the negatives that come with the top-down approach. And I think as we go into a transformative new governance style, we should really think about how do we make a bottom-up approach. And I think that means even going deeper than just one parent committee or one student committee, but going at the school level and supporting the people of the building to have more power and delineation in the decision making. So thank you, Chair, and thank you everyone for coming out.
Thank you, Chairman Jones. Any other board members? Chairman Severo?
You could just say
Chairwoman, I'm so sorry.
You could just say
I am
Heidi.
so sorry. I'm
Heidi,
sorry.
no worries. Thank you, everyone who came out and who sat here today. We always appreciate everyone who comes out. It's really important to advocate, and so thank you for being here. But I also just wanted to shout out, it's the 20th anniversary of Providence Princess. It's something that's always annually. So if you have any dresses, prom dresses, any shoes, jewelry, it's a really great event. It happens April 5th, and again, it's the 20th year that they're doing this. So if you know any students who need prom dresses or need any dance clothes, shoes, anything, it's a really cool event, and I suggest everyone go out and participate. It's for the community. I know it's not only just princesses, it's also they have male or suits and different outfits. Princes, it's for anyone, however you identify, there's outfits there for you. So please come through, participate. And if you know any student who needs those resources, again, it is Saturday, April 5th, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Any other public comment? Well, school board member comment? All right. Baby, did you want to?
Yeah. Just wanted to address the parent that had a question about the principal at Nathan Bishop. We will ask for more, Nathaniel Bishop, we will ask for more information and get back to the community on that.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to be moving over to item 7.0, school board committee updates. Now, each of our committees haven't, I believe just one, which is finance had met. And then we have a school collective governance and stakeholder engagement committee that has some updates, but I just want to go through all of the committees and have the chairs introduce themselves as well. So we want to start with policy.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, President Stevens. I am the new chairwoman for the policy committee. I just wanted to provide a brief update as we prepare for our first official meeting. It's going to be April 2nd. So please, I advise that everyone show up to that meeting as well. That's where we actually figure out policy. We're going to be talking about the visions and values of what we want PPSC to look like. On our policy committee, we have Secretary Newman and Secretary Fonts and Vice President Newman. So we will be there listening to the community. In our first meeting, we're going to be reviewing existing policies. So there's a couple of policies that haven't been updated since 2003, 2008, 2017. So this is something we're definitely going to be looking through. My vision for this committee is to be looking through our entire policy manual and figuring out how we as a school board and as a committee, with the advice and support from the community, how we can change these policies to better reflect what our schools look like and what our schools need. So again, it's going to be April 2nd. We will have everything posted. We'll have an agenda. So if you guys are more than welcome to show up and advocate. So thank you.
Thank you. Finance Committee, Dr. Williamson.
Thank you, Chairman. Or Mr. President, I'm sorry. Gotta get my
Okay.
titles right. I'm Stephen Williamson. I'm the chair of the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee had one meeting. We had 3 items on the agenda to consider. The first was a request for a contract amendment for Through Consulting. This contract was actually court mandated, and the initial contract was for $300,000, and that covered a year worth of monthly reports that were mandated by the court. They are doing an additional 4 quarterly reports for a cost of $58,000. So it's actually for additional services that weren't included in the initial contract. We recommend to the committee that contract be approved. It's court ordered anyway, so we actually don't have much choice in the matter. And then the other 2 contracts are for healthcare services that are provided to students with special needs. And the way those contracts work is that, as was explained to us, is that the district has multiple contracts with multiple vendors because they're not always certain who will actually have the personnel available to supply those services. So they have to sort of, get them from whoever can provide them. And the budget amount for it is divided up across a wider number of providers. So the approval of these additional costs doesn't actually add anything to the overall budget for these services. It's just going to be taken out of the contracts for the contractors that did not end up supplying services to the school district. And on both of those contracts, the committee also voted to recommend them for approval. So that's our report. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Williamson. Health and Wellness, Chairman Mahigable.
Thank you, Mr. President. We met with the districts this week to talk to plan about the health and awareness. In our next meeting next week on Wednesday the 26th, we're gonna have our first meeting of the Health and Awareness Committee. We're gonna be talking about the next mental health fair month. In May, I don't know if you guys remember, last year we had the mental health fair and we had 400 community members showed up. Students went to Brown University and they attended Brown University mental health fair, and they were very interested to have something similar in their schools. These students, they work very hard, very intelligent, and they've been working behind the scene. They're going to be joining our health and awareness committee to so we can work together, get sponsorship grants, and we asking again the community to show up and to support our students. The second one, we also going to be talking about the framework. I believe that I've been appointed here for 2 years. I need to make sure whoever going to be the next chair of health and awareness committee to understand that this committee have a certain process and structure that we can follow. And also we're going to be having Sodexo joining us to do a presentation as well. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Chairman Mahigable. CTE Committee update, Chairman Jones.
Yes. So first, I want to thank the president and the leadership team for selecting me to serve in this capacity. I really appreciate you trusting me to lead this work. I want to tell the audience a little bit about me. At my day job, I serve as the Chief of Policy and Planning at the Department of Labor's Governor's Workforce Board. So this role is definitely fitting, and I'm eager to dive into the work. And I believe my skills and experience will serve as well. So to ensure a smooth transition for the leadership team, me and President Stevens are working on a framework that will guide the work that this committee will do. This framework outlines the processes, the duties of the committee. It clarifies the current goals, which are subject to change. But it's good to start moving in a direction. So I think we are going to start with the turnaround action plans goals around CTE and some of the previous goals, and then work with the community to refine those. And I'm actively communicating with the school administrators, industry players, and partners, policymakers to align our objectives with the workforce demand, as well as with existing funding and programs at the state and city level. And something that's top of mind for me, for the committee, will be evaluating a strategic partnership with Junior Achievement's Rexel initiative. A little bit about Rexel is that it provides a centralized inventory for job shadows, internships, and career exploration. I think that this will give us the opportunity to not only be able to monitor the performance of the amount of students that are taking internships, job shadows, and career explorations opportunities. We can also connect that to our data system, the longitudinal data system, and see how those things are correlating with the social determinants of health. And I think that is also going to be helpful in creating goals to ensure that all students have career exploration and exposure, and then also connecting them to a career pathway or to a college pathway. So that's what's top of mind for me. Please, if you have any thoughts or opinions, we'd love to hear it. And again, thank you, President, and thank you, leadership team, for selecting me to serve in this role.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, we have both a school building committee and then also a collective governance and stakeholder engagement. So the collective governance and stakeholder engagement is that's a form of report out where the board, we have a bunch of external committees that we have to be a part of and we take part of. I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chairwoman, if we should probably talk about like merged school buildings in with that, and you can just give a broader update on that and everything else.
Thank you, President Stevens. The school building committee did not meet last month, so there is no recent update there.
Okay.
I believe both myself and Chairman Jones will be serving on that committee. So we may have more information, and I don't have the date in front of me right now for when that next meeting is. Those meetings are open to the public, and we encourage anyone from the community that's interested in getting updates to come there. And also, I'm not sure, I just said I'm not sure what the date is. We'll post it once it's posted. If someone from the district is aware of when that next meeting is, please feel free to alert me.
We'll post it on the,
It'll be
April the 22nd.
April
What time?
22nd
At 4 p.m.
at 4 p.m.
What's the location?
It will be over in the Providence Public Schools building unless otherwise noticed. You can keep an eye out. It'll be posted on the main calendar for the school district. It'll be on that like running ticker of calendar. And then you can also follow along on the Secretary of State's webpage. That's not a committee that's actually part of the school board. It's a multi-stakeholder committee. So it wouldn't show up in the same way as our agendas do, but you can follow it on the district calendar. We'll make sure to announce again because that'll happen after additional meetings by our board.
Okay, you can go to the collective governance and stakeholder committee.
Also me. So I want to thank President Stevens and the leadership team of the board for identifying that we have a sort of gap in the communication about some of these other things that are happening outside of our board committees. And so President Stevens has tasked me as being the main point person or liaison to report out on some of these other things at each meeting. After tonight, moving forward, this is a new role, so it's still a little bit in development, but I'm going to give you a super brief update on sort of the components that you'll be hearing about from me each month. So this has two pieces to it. So this collaborative governance component is about the different entities that are meeting to talk about a return to local control. So the two groups I want to highlight is that the commissioners team at RIDE has convened a collaborative working group. That group includes representatives from city leadership, both in the mayor's office and city council, as well as Superintendent Montañez and members of his senior leadership team, and school board members. I have been part of this group since its inception in November of 2024. And now joining me on this group will also be Vice President Newman. Since the reconstitution of this school board, that group has met once. We met on March 6th. And at that meeting, we talked about some of the onboarding and training for our school board. And we also talked about the commissioner's letter of February 18th, which laid out a number of particulars that she is looking for in order to help us regain local control. Some of those items include having better communication like this that I'm talking about right now. So this is a great step. That group is meeting again on March 25th. At that meeting, we'll be talking a little bit more about what the mayor's return to local control cabinet is working on. You may have seen a recent report from the mayor's office on their community engagement. They conducted both a survey and multiple other community engagement events, some of which were here and at other school locations, and others were in small groups led by community leaders. You can find all of that information on the city's website. The previous board members on this return to local control cabinet are no longer serving on the Providence School Board. Those members were former President Rogel and former Chairwoman Aiken. So the new members to serve on this cabinet from the board will be me and Secretary Fonts. And our first meeting with that group is going to be next Monday, March 24th. And we also are expecting sometime in April that the mayor will and his team will be releasing their plan for return to local control. So we encourage folks to be on the lookout for that plan. The second component of this, and I promise next time it'll be shorter, I'm trying to do a little exposition so that it's clear where we're trying to go with this. And so the other piece of this is stakeholder engagement. And to be more precise, what we're hoping to do with the board is to have a closer relationship and understanding of what some of the district's internal stakeholder engagement groups are doing. The commissioner in her February 18th letter that I referenced earlier specifically pointed to the Parent Advisory Council, or PAC, and the District-Wide Advisory Council, or DWAC. So that is where we are starting, but we understand that there are other stakeholder groups within the district, and we want to learn about those as well. So if you have suggestions around that, please reach out to me, and I'll continue to work with the superintendent and his team to identify if there are other groups that would be helpful for us to know about. The Parent Advisory Council, on which I served for many, many years before joining the school board last year, actually met last night. The Parent Advisory Council is a parent-led meeting with a parent-led agenda. There are representatives, not always in attendance, but it is open to parent leaders from every school across the district. And last night, there were 10 to 12 schools represented in that meeting. Issues that came up were a deep dive into attendance expectations and how some of the narrative or the ways that the district and state promote attendance and attendance matters sometimes can have unintended consequences and be difficult for families to follow through on, or may backfire and have them feeling less included in their schools. So there was a robust discussion from the Family and Community Engagement Department, as well as their attendance point person, and it was a wonderful way for parent leaders from their schools to bring concerns directly to the district and to have an engaging two-way conversation around that issue. Parents also raised concerns around or questions around the school year 2026 calendar, which looks significantly different than the school year 2025 calendar that we're in right now. And so there was discussion about how some of the vacation time looks different than it has before, and also the pre-Labor Day start for students. Families also raised some concerns around things that are happening at the federal level. I know many of our educators and speakers tonight raised those issues as well. I think that's a shared value and concern of our community. There was concern around the dismantling of the U.S. Department of Education and specifically around immigration enforcement. Because I was in that meeting, I was able to direct some parents as well to the presentation that we had here or across the street here in this imaginary space of our school board last month. And I think that was a helpful for some families. But I did hear some echoing in parent comments, like we heard from educators tonight, that from school to school, there may be some additional work to be done to make sure that families and educators feel informed and prepared to keep each other safe. I will also be coordinating with DWAC. They met before I took on this work, and their next meeting is April 10th. The next PAC meeting is April 22nd, which sounds like it's at the same time as the school building committee, so I will need to decide to cut myself in half for that, and I will discuss it with my colleagues of how best to engage in that way. But I just want to say thank you for listening to all of those updates. Again, it is my intention moving forward to be able to provide because this is so robust, to provide a brief written update that should be included with the agenda so folks can look at that. And then I can also answer any questions around those components. And I look forward to further guidance from President Stevens and my fellow school board members on how I can improve and continue to enhance this particular new update. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I will be moving over to action items. I'll be going to action item 8.1. Do I have someone from the district to speak on the participation with the Council of Great City Schools? Mr. Ruggiero.
Good evening, Mr. President and members of the board. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. So I'm here to provide a brief update on the engagement of the Council of Great City Schools. I have a document I'd like to share with the board. It's a memorandum from Mr. Christopher Redden, Chief of Staff for the Rhode Island Department of Education, and it concerns the funding for the first year of the contract, which I think was a topic of discussion last meeting, and further clarifies how that funding works and the conditions associated with it. So if I may, I have copies for everyone I'd like to provide, and I can briefly summarize and continue thereafter. Yeah, there's two documents. There's one document and 2 pages. So the first page is the memorandum, and the second page is an accompanying attachment. So in short, since last meeting, we made significant progress. Sure. We made significant progress working with the Council of Great City Schools on modifying what's their traditional agreement, the agreement that was originally circulated to each board member. So to comply with the board's request regarding funding certainty for the second year and ensuring that we comply with all required statutes and regulations regarding any public funding that we expended. So this document that you have before you is a memorandum. It details the way that the first year of the engagement would work. It provides that that first engagement is being funded by a grant provided by small donors through the Rhode Island Foundation upon the express condition that it be utilized for the work of professional development with the board, the district, and the Council of Great City Schools. So that is the condition for the issuance of the grant that was approved for the private funding to fund the first year of the agreement. Now, that being said, I did make significant progress, as I indicated, with the attorney for the Council of Great City Schools, ensuring that we would identify a specific source selection methodology, and that they would have before there would be any requirement that the district or PPSD fund any public dollars, put any public dollars towards this engagement, that there would be an opportunity for the board to again vote affirmatively to do so. So the way that we've negotiated thus far is prior to the engagement of the council for the second year, there would be again an opportunity for the board to reconsider whether to continue with that engagement and potentially bear the cost if there is no private money left to subsidize it, or elect to simply discontinue at that point. So it's kind of bifurcated into 2 different years with another option for the board if in fact there's a need to fund it with public dollars. So the first year, again, no public dollars, exclusively through the grant opportunity that's being provided. And the second year, before the engagement of CGCS, the board will have an opportunity to determine whether it wants to continue with the engagement, and again, make a determination as to what the source selection methodology will be to fund the contract. I also have, so you'll see that detailed here in Mr. Redden's memorandum. He asked as part of this that that memorandum be incorporated into the minutes and the record of tonight's meeting. And there's also attached to that, you'll see an exhibit. The exhibit is, kind of part of the genesis of how this engagement occurred, which is really a request of the commissioner through former board chair and President Erlen Rogel to have someone assist with the board in working towards building capacity for the purposes of return to local control. And that's kind of the genesis for the engagement. So that being said, I'm happy to answer any questions that any member of the board may have. But I think that hopefully clarifies any questions regarding how the funding will work in the first year, the board's opportunity to discontinue the engagement prior to expending any public money, at the conclusion of the first year, and kind of the genesis of how this evolved.
Do board members have questions? Mr. Mankable.
Charlie, I have a question. Can you talk about why the Great Council, the Council of... Oh, can you explain to the board why... Yeah, I'm like, what's going on? There you go. All right. Can you explain to the board why was the Council of Great City Schools selected without the competitive RFP process when multiple organizations offer familiar services?
Yeah, so the competitive selection process, the competitive bidding process is one of multiple potential source selection methodologies allowed for under the Municipal Purchasing Act. This contract itself evolved from a grant of private funding that was done through the Rhode Island Foundation. So how it came to pass that this vendor was specifically identified, I think, is largely based upon its decades of working relationship with the district. They've been engaged in several different tasks, have done professional development for the district before. It was a vendor whose work the district was familiar with. And then I think based upon, it was selected by the foundation based upon the ask of President Rogel and the commissioner. So that's how CGCS came to be selected, based upon their experience, their prior work history with the district, and the ask of the commissioner and President Rogel.
Any other question? Dr. Williamson?
Is it working now? Yeah. Okay. Yes, I had one question. And has the Council of Great City Schools agreed to amend their standard contract? Is that
They have. That's what I was communicating. I've worked with their attorney, Mary Lawson. We had
Okay.
a very collaborative discussion. We've actually agreed upon a document that provides exactly for what I indicated here tonight, which is that prior to the beginning of the second year and prior to the expenditure of public money, the board would have an opportunity to elect to discontinue the work after the first year,
okay?
Or alternatively provide for a different selection methodology.
Do we have an opportunity to view that contract?
Not yet. It's not before you tonight. I'm certainly happy to share it with the board in anticipation of, potentially the action if that's required. But that's essentially, I'll represent as the attorney. That's essentially what the document is that's been provided. Frankly, I've got it on my phone. If you'd like, I can share it personally with you after, Steve, if you'd like to just see it. But that's exactly what it provides for. It provides for that determination to occur prior to the expenditure of public money.
Thank you.
The second year's engagement.
Any other questions? Chairwoman Hughes?
Thank you. I believe when we had this discussion prior, we looked at the draft professional services agreement, and within that agreement, the cost structure was different depending on whether our vote to engage Council of Great City Schools was unanimous or not. Can you speak about that issue at all?
Yeah, that's still the case. So there is a $50,000 non-refundable payment made in the first year, paid and borne by the Rhode Island Foundation through the private funding grants. It's my understanding that there is not $10,000 more from the foundation to provide for that $10,000 payment that would be also payable to the council in the event of a non-unanimous vote. And frankly, having had the back and forth with them regarding that, they indicated to me that's their experience that when working with a divided board, it's far more difficult. There's a lot more resources that are involved, and that their time and the amount of work that they do is significantly more if, in fact, the entirety of the board does not really want to participate in the training. So, in trying to actually get them to waive or otherwise modify that $10,000 fee, that was something they were unwilling to do based upon, working with many, many districts, and including districts that have had boards divided on the question of whether or not to actually have professional development.
Can I
Dr.
follow
Win-
up?
oh, wait a
Sorry.
second. Go ahead.
Can I just that thought? Okay. I just want to name again. I know that I mentioned this in my earlier updates around collaborative governance, but I do want to highlight, just for point of discussion here, that quoting from the commissioner's letter to us in February 18th, in partnership with RIDE, the city needs to take leadership of developing and empowering a strong Providence School Board who is an effective and productive governance partner with the superintendent and PPSD leadership. The school board needs to take a vote to commit 2 years of training and support by a student outcomes focused governance coach, and will follow through on all aspects of a student outcomes focused governance work plan, that the plan that the board finalizes. So I just want to name that, like, engaging in this is both, in my opinion, necessary and best practice, but it's also something that could help us get closer to our, what I believe is a shared goal of return to local governance. That's all.
Thank you.
And if I could just say, I think regardless of the criteria that the commissioner set forth or the mayor may set forth, I think this is an opportunity that's pretty rare in terms of you're participating with a vendor who's going to be providing you these services at no cost, and you get an opportunity to see whether or not you want to continue. So it's kind of like a free trial period for, a period of time. That's what I would liken it to. And if at the end of the day you feel like it's not something you're benefiting from, you have an opportunity to cancel before you commit to any public money expenditure.
Absolutely. Before I go to Dr. Williamson, you can go right after. I got a couple of questions, but I'm gonna just ask one. Chairwoman Hughes had mentioned that the commission had put in her letter that the board has to commit to a student outcome focused governance framework. can you mention why it wasn't listed the Council of Great City Schools that conducts the framework, like the specific vendor, versus her saying a student outcome focused governance framework? And then was she leaving open the door for the board to say, hey, maybe we want to participate in a different vendor that provides the same services?
Well, I can't speak to the commissioner and what she meant or intended by the statement that she made regarding the conditions upon return to local control. I have no personal knowledge as to what she meant by that, so I can't really speak to that. Nor can I really speak to the interpretation. Again, I'd fall back to the idea that the evolution of this engagement was more than a year in the making, and it kind of came about by virtue of the collaborative work between former board president Rigel and the commissioner in terms of identifying someone who could potentially be agreeable to the Rhode Island Foundation, who has a track record of doing this work that would actually warrant private donors to say, you know what, we know that this company has a proven track record. We're willing to fund it on the basis of their experience and condition it upon them because we're familiar with their work, which I think is different. And you'll probably find some private donors would have a reluctance if you were to try to select a vendor that didn't have significant experience. It'd be more difficult to raise private funding to actually make that stretch and bear that cost on behalf of that type of organization. So I think really the grant and the donations were specifically conditioned because of the experience of the Council of Great City Schools doing this work and the familiarity of the foundation in terms of their work product.
Okay, really quick as well. Sorry, Dr. Williamson. What I wanted to ask was, what did I want to ask Tyrell? So for the vendor, is this in fact, are we saying that it doesn't need to be a sole source contract because the Rhode Island Foundation explicitly said that they wanted the Council of Great City Schools, or is this sort of considered a sole source contract? What's the legal piece around that?
You had the through contract on tonight. I would draw an analogy to the through contract, which is if you're going to utilize these private conditioned funds to pay for this, you really don't have a choice in terms of the selection of the vendor as it relates to that. So, in terms of its qualification as a sole source vendor, I would say it unquestionably qualifies just as through would qualify in the course of where you have a court designated, and this is the vendor you're going to utilize to support your special education student services. It's pretty much an identical situation where they would qualify based upon the fact that you want to utilize these conditioned funds. So, in the event you said, I'm going to fund this myself, I'm not going to utilize this, then you don't have a sole source selection supporting basis, but in this case where you're relying upon these grant funds that are specifically conditioned on the use of CGCS, then you have what's clearly under the regulations, an identified sole source provider based upon that funding arrangement.
So do we have do we have information, because I had asked about this, do we have information from the Rhode Island Foundation that explicitly says that they want the Council of Great City Schools to provide these services? Because I'm getting a statement here from former President Rogel and then sort of an opinion from you all, but I don't have the exact information, because when I sort of do my research and I get my legal advice, one of the things that is in the law is that even with a third-party donor, private donor, it has to go through an RFP if a different vendor provides the same services. So can you walk me through, sort of that?
Yeah, I'll just say that's not accurate. So,
Okay.
There's there might be 5 different source selection methodologies that you can employ. There was another contract that you had for multiple special education service providers on here. If you have people listed on the master pricing agreement for the state, you don't have to competitively bid a contract that you're going to give them. They're listed on the master price agreement. You can select them off of that. So again, there's 5 different source selection methodologies that you can employ. One being a sole source provider, provided that you meet the criteria, which in this case, I believe it does. So it does not have to be competitively bid provided that you've identified an alternative source selection methodology. So I don't know if that answers your question fully. I think there was a second part that I'm kind
It's
of
okay.
omitting
What
right now.
Dr.
In terms of the documentation, the only other thing I'll say is I've worked with the foundation on other initiatives. We've done the, hiring teachers of color initiative that they help support through grant funding. And, they're a private fund. They specifically require that they do not identify their donors. So it's not as if there's public meeting minutes associated with their meetings. And there's a reluctance to identify, that this is the funder that came forward to fund this grant. So, I think Mr. Redden, his attestation, he's asked, he's sworn it. It's on here. It's notarized. I'm sorry, it's not signed. But, that is, should be enough to substantiate that this is how this money kind of came about. I don't think, frankly, you're going to get former Congressman Cicilline to come here and testify that this is how this came about.
No, Charlie, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is there should have been some kind of paper trail that said that the Rhode Island Foundation isn't just going to give funds to a school district without there being some kind of paper trail or evidence that they're giving it. That kind of was what I was asking for when I had sort of requested it, because, we can get a written statement, but the written statement doesn't factually say whether the funds from the Rhode Island Foundation explicitly said it's supposed to be the Council of Great City Schools.
That's exactly what it says, actually.
Okay.
But
Where does it say that, Charlie?
So yeah, I'll read it for you here. But pertinent details, to that end, the first year of funding for the initial payment of $50,000 to CGCS is being offered through philanthropic funds secured in partnership with and administered by the Rhode Island Foundation. These funds are conditionally allocated for the Providence Public School Board and the Providence School District Central Office Administration Team to work together with the district's longstanding professional development technical assistance partner, the Council of Great City Schools. More specifically, these funds have been allocated to provide the board and PPSD admin team professional development focused around CGCS's national governance model predicated on a student outcomes focused approach. So, I think that is probably, barring a willingness on the former councilman's part to come here and also, state or attest to the board that this is how this funding worked. I think that is in writing. He's asked that it be part of the minutes. I think that is sufficient to demonstrate that that's how this funding is working. And again, there's no funding obligation. We're not coming up with any money as it relates to this contract for year one. So it's obviously, it's being paid through somebody. And I think the attestation that it's coming through the Rhode Island Foundation is sufficient. I know it's sufficient for me to feel comfortable, and I believe for court to feel comfortable justifying this contract as a sole source contract.
Okay, Dr. Williamson?
Thank you. I was just curious, is it normal for a vendor to offer a different price for a unanimous vote? Something that's a contract that's accepted unanimously versus one that's not? Just that in itself strikes me as odd.
I would say, Board Member Williamson, that it's not something I've routinely seen, but having had the conversation with them about waiving that, I understand their rationale, and I understand that in their experience, we all set a price for the services of our work, right? But I understand in their experience, which they've worked with many districts before, it's significantly more effort and more work to work with, a team that is divided in terms of its willingness to participate in such professional development. So I think that's just in how they price their model based upon their experience.
So given that, as a follow-up question, should we then wait until all board members are present to vote on this?
I don't think it's necessary for purposes of the contract. So it may, if that's the board's prerogative.
I'm asking on behalf of, so if the logic is that we all should vote unanimously, because otherwise it's going to create all this extra work for them, because the person who's voting against, the person who's absent may also not support this contract, and we have no way of knowing. So therefore,
the way I interpret unanimity is votes cast.
Which makes it seem like their justification is, if they accept that, it makes it seem like the justification for insisting on
That's
unanimity is a
well,
little
that's
bit fuzzy.
Whether it's their justification or my legal argument, I think you're on safe legal grounds in terms of saying that,
Okay.
unanimity constitutes votes cast.
The other thing is the original contract that I saw said that it was $100,000 for 2 years.
That's correct.
So, and the discount was a $10,000 discount off of that. So did they? Is it?
So the $10,000.
The original contract I saw said the non-refundable base fee for the 2-year contract term is $100. So ordinarily they ask for $100,000 up front.
Correct.
Contingent upon meeting the requirements of section, et cetera, et cetera.
Correct.
However, a discount of $10,000 will be given if the school board's vote to approve this contract is unanimous.
That's correct.
So $50,000 is the fee for the first year, and there would be a $5,000 discount if the vote's unanimous. I'm willing to vote in favor just so we get the $5,000 off, because why spend money we don't have to? And my
That's how I read it as well.
reservations about this have been well documented. So I'm not just going to continue to to be a thorn in everybody's side, and I'm willing to trust the wisdom of the board. If the board's, in favor of it, I'll vote in favor of it as well. But I do this seems strange to me.
Yeah. Again, I would say
I just need to say,
in my experience, it's not something I've
Yeah.
seen routinely. But I can understand the logic, having had engaged them in the conversation as to why.
right, except that logic doesn't seem to make sense if they'll accept the votes of 9 members with 1 member being
that's
absent.
my legal position, not necessarily their
So-
their.
So they may in
acceptance,
fact
I would say.
actually want all 10 members to vote unanimously.
I don't know. I haven't asked them that question, but I don't think
Because
that'll
based
be-
on your conversation, it seems like that would be the logical conclusion. Your conversation with them, but whatever the board wants
Perhaps.
to do, I'll go along. Done. So
Mr. Mahigable, and then Ms. Severo.
Maybe Chairman Sival can go first, because I wanted to maybe the president can lead us to this for a motion for us to wait.
Okay, wait a second. Okay, go ahead.
Hello? Okay. So my question is for this specific vote, it's participation with the Council of Great City Schools. This vote, if we're not unanimous on this vote, we get the $10,000 fine, or is this vote to continue the conversation? Is this like the moment?
That's the board's prerogative based upon the action items. In terms of the action items listed for possible action, it's the board's prerogative whether you take the vote now, or you
So I
take
guess
some
that's-
other vote.
For President Stevens, are we gonna motion to continue conversation or take a vote for, I guess that's what the agenda item, what is it currently for?
Right.
I think
I don't even think I'm there yet. I want to be. I don't have me personally. I'm just now getting information. I wanted to avoid, the back and forth. So I wanted the information in advance so members could speak or have the information among themselves and just come and have a discussion. Me personally, I need more information. I have a bunch of questions, but I don't even think that this is the setting to ask them in. But like I said, I trust the wisdom of the board on tonight. If I had to decide on tonight, we will not get the $10,000 off because there's just a lot of questions that I personally have legally, and then also as it pertains to the vendor. Because if we was to mention to the people at the last meeting that one of the recommendations from the Council of Great City Schools was to take out public comment, I don't think that the community would be happy about that. So that's just for me that I wanted to share. I don't know. Me personally, I think if we can get around this legal piece, I know that it's being presented, but I have a lot more questions. Maybe there can be a unanimous vote and we can get the $10,000 off. But like right now, I still just have a lot of questions I would like to sit down and talk to you about. And Sarah, our legal counsel, before me personally, I vote toward it. Now, the majority of the board rules, but me personally, legally, I just don't feel comfortable with doing that right now. Does anybody else have any questions? Mr. Chairman Jones and then Mr. Mahigable, can you give him a mic, please?
Hello. Yeah, I just wanted to make a motion to add the memo to the record as Exhibit A. Can I get a second?
So there's been a motion made to add the memo. Is this, are we able to do that?
I think you are.
Okay, I will motion to add the memo to, what are we adding it to? The record, is seconded by Ms. Severio. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Any nays, abstentions? The motion passes.
I would like to make a maybe President can help me to this. For us to make, I'm making a motion for us to wait until Vice President Newman is present, and to make sure that we have the $10,000 off.
So
Sorry, so really quick, there's been a motion made. There's a motion to, what's the motion, Knight? What's the motion you made? To wait until Vice President Newman's here, and that, it's just that? Do we have a second? We have a second? I'll second that motion. Okay, any discussion? Yes.
Is there a deadline for when we need to accept this? Because I know we keep pushing it back, and I don't know if their offer is going to expire.
they haven't stated that to me, but there is just a deadline in terms of the actual timeline for the work to be completed. So, as we continue this out potentially to next month, I think you get closer in terms of actually having to modify the modify the timeline for the actual work to be done. So I think it pushes back the timeline.
I was going to call you Secretary Hughes. Chairwoman Hughes.
Thank you.
Oh,
I just wanted to clarify, if I may, that we took a vote at last month's meeting, and we just approved earlier in this meeting the minutes that contain that. So just to reiterate what we did last time, we made a motion for a resolution to approve the board's continued engagement of the Council of Great City Schools to explore options for further professional development toward a student outcomes focused governance model. Sorry, that's a mouthful. Subject to subsequent review of the specific professional services agreement, as we're hearing right now, and conditional upon full funding outside of PPSD's budget. And in that vote, I do not want to speak for Ms. Newman's future votes, but I can tell you that in that vote at our last meeting, that Ms. Newman was an aye. So we approved that motion 7-3, and the nays were President Stevens, Chairman Mahingabu, and Chairman Williamson. So what I want to note here is that I'm a little bit nervous to say that we're going to wait until a day when all 10 of us are here to take a vote, because that may not happen again. And so to Chairwoman Silverio's point, we have already pushed this out much further than the original suggested implementation timeline. And all of that is subject to a lot of work that the board and the chair of the board in particular would need to do to finalize and hone this and create this timeline and plan for the board that was agreeable to the entire board. So if we don't take an action now, our next board meeting is at the very end of April, after the April break. So it is my understanding, please correct me, council, if I'm misrepresenting this, that otherwise, because we need to discuss this at our regular board meeting, we'd have to call a special meeting to be able to approve that again, which we certainly could do. I just want to be clear about what our timeline is here and like how long we've been discussing this. Our original engagement and training with the Council of Great City Schools on a student outcomes focused governance model was on January 31st and February 1st.
So I think you could certainly convene a special meeting if the board saw fit to do that prior to April's meeting. Otherwise, it would likely be a matter that would just be rescheduled and continued until April. And if that's the board's prerogative, you could just have a motion that would do that to continue the meeting until April or until such time as the board elects to convene a special meeting to vote on this issue. So you're free to do either of the above. In terms of the impact on the timeline, I don't know that I feel particularly versed in terms of saying how that impacts the work itself. But I have not received any notification from the Council of Great City Schools that the offer is off the table or anything like that in terms of the funding allocation. Excuse me, in terms of the PSA and what the terms are.
Secretary Fonts.
Yeah, I think for me, just quick, because I know I want to get to the resolution. So quickly, one, Angel Newman is very much in favor of this contract. Any board member who is feeling any hesitation, I just text her. She is in very much support of this contract and okay if we vote on it. Second, we need the training, and the longer we put it off, we are gonna, like, we're potentially getting the schools back in July. We need to get a contract with this, either them or someone else, as soon as possible. We cannot do the work for our students if we don't decide on this. So board, if you needed any comfort note, like for Angel not being here, she is in support of this. I am texting her.
Thank you, Secretary. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. If the motion does not pass, we can then entertain another motion to pass the resolution. Now, really quick, because it's a discussion, I'm going to make it very clear to the board that, I, in fact, will not be supporting this right now. There was a possibility if we had a special meeting or if the meeting was next month that I would. There's too many legal concerns still around this contract that me personally, I can't support. And then I haven't even gotten into the framework piece when, like I said, we're having discussions around canceling out public comment supported by this vendor. So, these are some of the concerns that I have personally. And yes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to entertain a vote. Well, go ahead, Superintendent.
Before you take a vote and do motion, I just want to make sure that I get on records with my perception of working with this team. I've worked with them prior as superintendent in other areas, and I think this is a very important opportunity for us to grow. I know you're taking the vote as a board, but I also, myself and members of my team also are participating in this professional development. I strongly advise, you're all going to make your decisions, but I strongly advise that we move forward and make sure that we continue with the professional development, because it's only going to help us become better at what we do in serving our community, serving our students, and it shows that we're coming together as a unit. I extremely ask every one of us to make sure, or you who are going to be voting, that we vote to move on, because we've been putting it off too long and we need to get the work done. This is not about us. This is about the students. Let's get the work done. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. I would also like to mention, I'm not in disagreement that the board, needs professional development services. I'm in full agreement that we need professional development services. I just don't know legally if this is something that, I support, and also according to the framework and being the chair of the board, something that I sort of agree with, so those is my concerns personally. I am okay with being the only individual not supporting the contract, and I would be okay and proud that I represented my community well. But, one of the things that had happened last year, the board had approved the contract, and we had gotten called out for approving that contract and not doing our due diligence. So, those are just my concerns that I have. I believe that the board definitely needs PD. I'm not in disagreement with that. I just don't particularly know if this vendor is the perfect, solution to the professional development that we need. Okay, Mr. Jones and then Dr. Williamson, did you want to go? Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say real quick that I had a different interpretation on regarding public comment. I actually have reached out to you, Mr. President, about adding an addition that would be focused on getting community input around student outcomes, where we would have conversation with the community. And I believe that would lead us to be in compliance with the structure and framework of the Council for Great City Schools, as they asked for us to have a 3 to 6 month thorough communication and listening, sessions with the community. I think part of the problem is that the community hasn't been heard. So, when there's a crisis, we see a lot of folks come out and then we hear about things that we didn't hear about already. But I think this contract would actually make us more proactive in our communication with the community. But either way, whether, we sign this contract or not, if not, I will personally do the work on my own behalf. And connecting with the community, and more than just what's happening in this current crisis, but more about how can we be proactive to ensure crises don't come in the future. So I hope in our future meetings that we add that addition, that community listening form addition that would put us in compliance with the framework of the Council for Great City Schools.
Thank you. All right, we're going to take a vote. If the vote does not pass, we'll entertain another vote, and then we'll get to the resolution because I know some people are here for that. So there has been a motion made to wait upon the arrival for Vice President Newman to be here to take a vote. Mr. Mahigabu made the motion. I had seconded the motion. We've had a discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any nays? Any abstentions? All right, Dr. Williamson abstained. Me and Night Jean voted yes. And then the other members of the board voted no. The motion does not pass. I'll entertain another motion. Can we entertain another motion on this item? Chairman Mahigabu, no, I'm sorry. Chairman Jones had made a motion to move forward with the Council of Great City Schools. Do I have a second? Seconded by Ms. McCardo. I'm sorry about that. Any discussion? All signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any noes? I'm a no. Any abstentions? Abstain by Dr. Williamson and abstained by Chairman Mahigabu. Mr. Stevens said no. Everyone else voted yes. The motion passes. Thank you. Can we move on to item 8.2? Can I make a motion to approve 8.2, which is resolution urging RIDE to hold non-renewals of 17 non-10-year teachers? Do I have a motion? Motion's been made by Chairman Mahigabu. Do I have a second? Seconded by Secretary Fonts. Any discussion? All right, Ms. Hughes?
I'd like to ask our council for the board and/or for the district to please advise. I have some concerns about this resolution as drafted because it reads to me like I am discussing a personnel matter, and it's my understanding as a board member that I am not supposed to be doing that in this avenue. So I guess I'm looking for some clarity around what this resolution would mean if the board entertains that. For the record, I'm deeply interested in learning more. It is clear that there is a strong community outcry for more information about the non-renewals process. I know that we have the general process on our agenda for later. But if we were to discuss any specifics, including the 17 recent non-renewals, my understanding is that we would need to do that in a very specific way to follow the law. And I just want to make sure that we're not doing that by entertaining this resolution. Thanks.
So let me endeavor to answer that. Certainly as it relates to discussion of any particular circumstances surrounding any of the individual teachers themselves, it would not be appropriate to discuss any of those individual circumstances, given the fact that they had not received notice that their potential performance or job character would be discussed this evening as part of either of these two discussion items, the matter before you in terms of the presentation, or the executive session matter, or in fact the resolution itself. So it would be inappropriate to talk about the individual circumstances regarding any particular teacher and what led to their non-renewal recommendation. as it relates to a concern related to the resolution, I have a concern that prior to understanding the process that was entertained, how it went about, and the criteria that was considered, that there would be a resolution that would be acted upon, that would be a statement, essentially 17 non-renewals, the circumstances of which I believe you've only heard about 3 of them. So, in terms of that action item, I think it would first at least be appropriate for the board to understand the process that was followed by the district, how these recommendations come about, and, before entertaining or considering a resolution that would essentially say it's the board's position that none of these are warranted.
Secretary.
I think that the resolution isn't. Never mind. I need a second.
Go ahead. No, say it. Okay. Anyone else has something to say? Any other? I would say that, so this vote would be non-binding, correct? This is a non-binding vote in our advisory capacity.
It is a non-binding vote in your advisory capacity, but obviously there's political connotations associated with it. And it might be something that, potentially, I can see scenarios in which it would potentially be utilized against the district.
Anyone has questions? Anybody? Miss Averio?
I know you said that it could potentially be used against the district. Is this like in terms of opening up to like a school board to potential liability? Legal liability.
I would feel more comfortable having a conversation regarding that in executive session than I would in open session. Therefore, pending litigation or potential litigation in executive session. So if you'd like to have a more robust comment about what potential liability I could foresee, I think that would be a better place to have that conversation.
Ms. Hughes?
One thing I neglected to mention in my original question, I also recall that this particular round of non-renewals has a statutory deadline of March 1st. And so can you speak at all that if we were to urge rescinding them, what impact that might have on statutory deadlines and the ability of the district to have any non-renewals whatsoever?
Certainly. So, there is a March 1st notification deadline, which would mean that each teacher, each non-tenured teacher would have to receive the actual decision before March 1st. So if there was an effective rescission of the non-renewal, the impact of that would essentially give tenure to teachers that are in their second or third year of the district. And tenure is a property interest and a property right that they would have to continued employment. So I think, and perhaps this is more appropriate for the overall presentation, but just to give you a little glimpse into what that's going to consist of, the determination to afford a teacher tenure is a significant decision in the scope of a public school district. And, when we're evaluating that decision, you're not just looking at the performance of the teacher immediately, but you're looking at, is this a teacher that we think would be beneficial to the district over the next 25, 30 years of a career? The process for terminating a tenured teacher is an extremely cumbersome, lengthy, expensive process. We've had cases that have gone all the way up to the Supreme Court that have taken us 5 to 6 years to the tune of $400,000-$500,000 to actually render a decision regarding the propriety of terminating a teacher. So if there is some concern by the part of supervising principals and administrators who see these teachers on a day-to-day basis and work with them in their schools on a day-to-day basis, usually our recommendation is to at least to make a recommendation for non-renewal if you have a concern that they're going to be a good, effective teacher, for you, if they're not going to be a good, effective teacher for you over the next 25, 30 years.
Really quick, Chairman Mahigabo.
I'm surprised. Thank you, Charles. I have a question. If you can, maybe explain to the board in the last 4 years or 5 years I've been in this board, if a teacher is about to get non-renewal, usually there's a process. The district reach out to the board, and we have an executive section. Can you tell me? You guys knew the deadline was March 1st, and we had the meeting in February, and you guys had the agenda. You created the agenda for the meeting. You could have included into an executive session to this meeting. Why didn't that happen?
Yeah, I think, and I think this is again more appropriate for the conversation regarding the process. So, if
we have teachers, I'm sorry, we have teachers in the room. They want to know.
Yeah, I mean,
they-
I'm not I'm not the person that makes every decision as it relates to how the school department proceeds on these matters. So, but to the extent to answer your question, we had one meeting in which business was not conducted because of the absence of a quorum. If there was a second meeting in which business could not have been conducted because of the absence of a quorum, we would have missed the March 1st notification deadline. And all of
But
those
we
teachers.
knew we wouldn't have the quorum that day. The district had it. You guys could have had it in the agenda 2 weeks before. I'm asking you, who made the decision? Why didn't add it to the agenda? If you can answer me, I need somebody to answer it right now.
Yeah, I mean,
and
I'm
why?
telling you, I think the concern was that you were not going to have a quorum for the meeting, in which case you would have missed the March 1st notification deadline.
You knew we wouldn't have the
I
quorum
didn't
that
know.
day.
I think
Why
that was
didn't
the-
nobody
that-
put
I
in
think-
the agenda?
Again, I would suggest, Najeeb, that I did not know one way or the other. All right. There was a concern that there was a need to get notifications out before March 1st. Right. And based upon that concern, there couldn't be the risk of there not being a quorum for the school board to render its advisory opinion as it related to the non-renewal recommendation. So consistent with the commissioner's order for a set of non-renewals that was done the prior year, the position was taken that the commissioner could do that without seeking the advisory determination of the board. So that's why the process was distinct and different this year than in prior years.
Any other questions? Oh, I'm so sorry, Ms. Avera.
No. Yeah, no. I wanted to put on the record that I'm in full support of figuring out what the process is and the transparency of this. So that's why I'm just asking the question on this, because I want to make sure that we're not only fixing the process for the 17 teachers that were non-renewed now, but to make sure that this process is not continued on for the next year, which is why I know Chairwoman Melissa Hughes and I are trying to figure out like what is it that we're actually voting on. I don't know if this is information that we've gotten before, or if you guys, or if maybe Chairman Mahingabo have gotten that information, because that's kind of what we were confused about, is what is this process? And so we didn't want to vote on this resolution without getting the full information on this, especially if there's a legal liability to the school board. So that's just, I wanted to make sure that was on the record. It's not, we're in full support. We just want to make sure that we're fully looking at the process so we can figure out where did we go wrong and how we can fix that.
Secretary Fonz.
I just want to go on the record, Mr. Ruggiero. You said that this resolution could potentially make the district look a certain way. My understanding, this resolution was written based off of hours of testimony. This is the second month and I have a folder full of letters in support. So I don't think it's us saying like, oh, the district is that the board at least is not saying the district is intentionally firing non-binary LGBTQ teachers, but we're saying this process doesn't feel like it was equitable, or at least we don't understand the process. So the resolution is just calling for that process, really.
And let me see if I don't have the resolution in front of me. I don't know if you have a physical copy right now.
I have it on my phone if you want to look at it.
Do you have a packet with the physical copy?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I didn't say that. I think
Zach
my
has it.
concern. The one thing that I would be concerned about
Yeah, I think really quick, Charlie. When I look at it, it says it calls for a full review, which means a process. It then says request a temporary pause and seek sort of information. So it says commit to policy reform and then demand policy update. It doesn't really, sort of like accuse anybody or sort of interrupts the process. It's really calling for a more transparent, robust, conversation among, RIDE and the school board or something along those lines.
Yeah, I think it's the only two proportions that I think give me a little pause in looking at it from potentially defending the district at a later time in in some type of action. And it's really regarding, the non-renewal of these 17 educators raises concerns about PPSD's ability to uphold its commitment to equity and inclusion and urges the rescission of these non-renewals for proper vetting and board approval to ensure fair and objective evaluations. So I think those are the two portions of it where I can foresee, and again, we can discuss this further in executive session, but I can foresee there being this resolution being utilized in some form of litigation at some point in which the board or as part of the district is a party and may have to be defended. These cases proceed usually on an administrative track. They proceed after a decision is rendered on the non-renewal through RIDE and an administrative process. But there are other avenues that people could proceed, which would involve a legal action in court potentially, or via some other administrative body. So I can see a scenario in which this might be a relevant document in the course of that litigation.
Any final thoughts? Okay. If the motion has been made to approve the resolution, it was made by Mr. Mahigabo, seconded by Secretary Fonts. We've had a discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Okay, wait a second. So we have ayes. Okay, how many says no? Any abstentions? Okay. Okay, so everyone voted yes. There was only one no, no abstentions. The motion passes. Thank you. One abstention. Oh, I'm sorry. One abstention. All yeses. No nos. Motion passes. Thank you so much. Okay, we're gonna go over to item 9.0, which is the approval of the contracts. Is there a motion to approve 9.1 through 9.3? Motion's been made by Chairman Mahigabo. Is there a second? Seconded by Chairman Jones. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Any noes, abstentions? The motion passes. We're going to go to presentations, which is 10.0, Human Resources Overview of Non-Renewal Process. How are you, Zach?
Good. Thank you, President Stevens. So joining me tonight are Chief Talent Officer Herman James, and I think Solicitor Ruggiero will be joining us as well. And we will pull up the presentation here and walk you through it, and then certainly happy to answer questions. It's a short presentation, so certainly throughout and definitely at the end. And as was noted earlier, obviously we cannot discuss the individual circumstances of personnel, but wanted to walk through the process that we go through each year, including this year.
We're just setting up the presentation. Okay, you technical, you're gonna, okay. Listen, can the board go into I was gonna say, I want to go into a 5-minute recess. Can I get a motion to go into a 5-minute recess? Motion's been made by Secretary Font, seconded by Ms. Mikado. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. All right, the motion passes. We got to be back here by 8:41. Calling this meeting back to order. We're at items, what's the item? We're at items 10.1 presentation. Mrs. Scott?
Thank you so much. Again, my name is Zach Scott. I'm the Deputy Superintendent of Operations, joined by Herman James, our Chief Talent Officer, and our solicitor, Charlie Ruggiero, will be back up with us momentarily. We don't have too many slides, so happy to answer questions as we go through, as well as have a discussion at the end. Our goal here today is, I know we had sent a few memos to the board kind of summarizing the process here, but we wanted to walk it through and then leave time for questions. And as I mentioned, and Solicitor Ruggiero can explain more, we can't speak to individual situations here, but we can absolutely talk about the non-renewal process that we follow every year, including this one. So Chief Sutherland, if you could go to the first slide. So first and foremost, talking about why this process is so important, and I'll reiterate what Charlie had mentioned earlier. So teacher effectiveness is the most important in-school factor impacting student outcomes. And so having incredibly effective and diverse talent in our schools is important to the values of the district, also the success of our students. And the renewal and non-renewal process and subsequent granting of tenure is a key lever that districts have to retain or exit talent. We often think of, as Charlie mentioned, when you are making a decision to grant tenure, you are committing to an individual and saying, I have enough information for you to stay, that I feel comfortable having you stay with the district for likely the rest of your career. So it's an incredibly important decision. A little bit of what it means to be a probationary teacher versus a tenured teacher. And all of this is governed by Rhode Island general laws that certainly we in Providence are bound to, but all school districts in the state are bound to as well. We can answer any technical questions you have here, but in short, each in their first 3 years, teachers are probationary and are granted annual contracts, after which in their subsequent year, they are granted tenure. And the ability to dismiss teachers once receiving tenure is incredibly challenging. And so it is something that we are excited to offer teachers that we want to retain with the district, but it's also something that we hold a very high bar for and we take very seriously. Again, for that most important point at the top, that the effectiveness of our teachers has the biggest impact on student outcomes. And so you can kind of see, if you slide down just a little bit, Scott, decisions here, again, we take them very, very seriously. That does not mean they're easy, but it is something we spend a lot of time on, because it is not a decision we are making just for this moment in time or just for the students in front of us, but for the students that will be in our schools for decades to come. If you go to the next slide, please. So to share a little bit of our process, and then I will have Mr. James go in greater depth here, because he spends a lot of time managing this process. But first and foremost, we begin in August. We have our annual School Leadership Academy with our principals. We cover a lot of topics there, oftentimes academic focused, our goals for the year, but also refreshers on key things related to human resources and talent management. At that time, we are talking with administrators about, particularly our new administrators, about the non-renewal process, because again, it's decisions that are timely and need to be made each year. In October and November, teacher evaluation process begins for all teachers. And also at that time, Herman, the Chief Talent Officer, shares the non-renewal process with administrators, along with key dates and milestones. So all principals in our schools receive information on the non-renewal process and what needs to be done in the event that they want to non-renew a teacher in their school. Then support for teacher supervision and evaluation is provided by the transformation officers, those are principal supervisors, and HR to our principals. In January, school leaders complete a packet outlining requests for non-renewal. So these all come from our school. These decisions or initial recommendations come from each of our school leaders. They come in the form of evidence-based packet that they submit, and those complete packets are submitted to Human Resources for review. Then in February, a team of principal supervisors, our legal staff, our human resources staff review those recommendations to see and check for any questions or concerns, followed up by one-on-one meetings with each school leader on their recommendations. So the initial recommendations that come in from our principals to our HR office are not all that make it through. There are ones that we either believe may not have the rise to the level of a non-renewal, and in those cases they aren't pushed forward, but those that are then submitted to the superintendent for final decision making. Go to the next slide. I'll ask Herman to share a little bit here, both on the overall process, but particularly around the reviews that we go through and how we think about the reviews that are done of the recommendations that come in from our principals.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. President, thank you so much, and school board members, and also our superintendent, Dr. Montanez. Would like to just share a little bit about our school principals and leaders being the instructional leaders of our schools. So they are responsible and accountable for instruction in their buildings, student outcomes, and student achievement. So those are the individuals who certainly make those recommendations for non-renewals. So it's important that as a human resources entity, we certainly spend a lot of time in looking at the review of that data and all of the documents that are submitted to human from our principals and all of our leaders. It's a rigorous, thorough process because we need to ensure that we're not arbitrarily selecting teachers for non-renewal. We need to be sure that we have evidence, strong evidence, and documentation to support the recommendation of the school principal. So just as Mr. Scott indicated, we have those one-on-one meetings. When I say we, I'm speaking of human resources. We have the principal supervisor, who is called the transformation officer, as a part of that team. We also have the legal team that's part of that review. We have several levels of review to ensure that these recommendations are ready to move forward to that final phase, which is to our superintendent for final review and approval. So we look at various aspects of the data. We want to ensure that whatever that principal is recommending, that there's documentation, evidence that aligns with that recommendation or that indicator so that we can move forward with that non-renewal. If it does not pass that review, it is kicked back to the school principal for additional documentation or support. And if that's not provided, then we can't move forward with that recommendation. It is a very rigorous, thorough process so that we ensure that we're not arbitrarily selecting teachers to be non-renewed in the process. And human resources is that gatekeeper. We're the ones to ensure that we're operating in a fair and equitable process. So we look at several factors when we identify non-renewals. We look at employee performance. We want to certainly take a look at any observations, check-ins, any classroom visits. All of those are documentation, evidence that we can use to support. Discipline, any discipline that were provided for that employee. Those discipline records come to human resources. It becomes a part of that employee's record. So we certainly take a look at the discipline pieces as well. And attendance is important. If we have a probationary teacher who's been with us less than 2 years or less than a year, and we see that their attendance is a concern and an issue, that becomes part of an indicator for us. And then we look for the evidence to support that as far as non-renewal is concerned. And all of these things are done to determine if the district is able to find a better qualified teacher for the position. That's what's important here. We need to ensure that we have the best talent and the best teachers in our schools in front of our students and our children. So only those recommendations are that successfully pass all of those levels of review, all of those indicators, looking at the evidence and documentation, only those that successfully pass the review are submitted to the superintendent for final review and approval. I also want to note that the standard that we're looking at here is whether or not the district can find a more qualified teacher. But at the same time, we want to ensure that that documentation supports every recommendation that that principal is making regarding that employee and that probationary teacher. All recommendations for teacher non-renewals must be approved per Rhode Island state law before the March 1st statutory deadline for notification.
Thank you, Herman. And just with our last slide before we open up to questions, I did want to highlight a few items, both based on what we've heard in discussions here and elsewhere. Just to note that the number of teacher non-renewals over the past several years, and Charlie can speak prior to the intervention, has been around 20 each year, which tracks with where we are this year in terms of around 17 for performance non-renewal. Right now, we have 465 probationary teachers, so the 17 represents less than 4%. Some of the recommendations include teachers on provisional licensures who have not continued with required coursework. That is not all, but that isn't how it applies to some cases. And just to correct what I've heard several times, that teachers are able to reapply for positions in the future. I think you had actually a teacher testify last time who had been non-renewed and then was rehired into the district. It doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. So I just know I've heard statements made to the contrary. The last thing I think is just to double down a little bit on what Herman shared around the standard for a more qualified teacher. So obviously we are doing our best, and Herman's team is doing working around the clock to make sure we fill all our teacher vacancies that we have. That said, we still need to make personnel decisions, even in an environment where we have teacher vacancies. Again, because we are not making a decision about what is with us just today. It is a decision that we will live with for decades. So if we are not comfortable granting a teacher tenure or keeping a teacher with the district long term, if you ask any principal, they would rather go out and try to search for someone new than commit to someone for the next 20 or 30 years that they're not comfortable with. And that is certainly the position of the district as well. So with that, we are happy to answer questions on the process this year. And again, can't speak to individual cases, but more than happy to answer any questions you have about the process.
Opening it up for questions, Dr. Williamson.
So I just thank you very much for the presentation. I guess when we talk about like passing a review, so I guess I'd just like to hear a little bit more about like what is the standard for what is the standard when you say that somebody the documentation has to pass a review? Is there a particular number, or is it like assigned a grade and it has to pass a certain?
No, so this is really your most flexible opportunity to scrutinize who you're going to give a constitutionally protected property interest to. So after you've reached or come past this time period and you have teachers that are tenured, there's a presumption that they're qualified and well qualified to do the functions of their job.
Right.
You're not going to be able to successfully really argue to an arbitrator or to a third party or a court that this person isn't qualified or is a poor performing teacher when you've had 3 years or 2 years of a successful probationary period that they've made it through. There becomes a presumption that they're qualified to do their job. So really what this is like any probationary period of anyone's employment, anybody that's had a probationary period of employment, it's really the employer's opportunity to really scrutinize during that time period whether they think this person will be, a successful teacher over the next 25, 30 years in this district with these kids. And that's really the opportunity that the employer has from the statutory construction of the Tenure Act within the first 2-3 years. So there's no quantitative test, Steve, to say like, all right, if you get these 7 demerits, you're going to get non-renewed. It's really a function of the recommendation of the principal who we rely upon as building leaders and who also under statute are empowered to make hiring and potentially, employment decisions for their building. It's based upon that building level determination, based upon the observations that those principals and administrative team has had regarding the interaction with that teacher and their students. And all of that we ask be provided to us by way of documentation. So the supporting documentations that principals fill out, and you'll see it, I think, as part of the appendices to the presentation, is like a narrative form, like they're describing, their interaction, the performance concerns that they've had, and also basically an election at the conclusion of that. Or would you recommend that this person be granted tenure or not? So it's really based upon the view of the admin team, and provided that any concerns that they've had, they have some documentation that they can provide to us demonstrating that it's not ex post facto, it's actually contemporaneous to their concerns.
And I would just add to that. I mean, so we have our legal team, our HR team, principal supervisor. So they're offering several different lenses to it. So one is, are there any parts of the evaluation that would trigger an employment concern? So is someone not using objective data or something that is biased? That's a screen that is being done through there. The principal supervisors who are former school leaders supervise these principals would be saying, like, are the recommendations based on sound criteria or objective criteria that is aligned with student outcomes? And obviously, both between HR and legal, they are looking for anything that would violate or be in conflict with employment law. So again, there's not a rubric that says if you get a 5 or above, so it's based on the recommendation. The review there is making sure there is solid evidence that supports the HR, school leader, and legal perspective in that recommendation.
So I guess my concern is that absent a knowledge of how these concrete indicators that are being used to determine somebody's renewal or non-renewal, absent a sense of how those indicators look for the rest of the population that the individual is being selected out of for non-renewal, then it does, in my mind, open up the possibility that it isn't being based on those objective indicators. You know what I'm saying? So like, if somebody says, why did you pick this used car off the car lot? And I said, because this one had the fewest dents, but I don't tell them how many, I didn't look at the other cars to see how many dents they had, then I probably wasn't actually basing it on how many dents there were. You know what I'm saying? So I just think there's like,
my colleagues can disagree. I mean, I don't think to make a decision here, you don't need like a census of every, you know, the down to the, you know, all the standards in our evaluation system, everyone stacked up and then saying, we're looking at the least 10.
Right.
We are saying, school leader, you are responsible for leading this school, managing a team of teachers. Do you want this person in your building for 20 years? And what is your evidence to do that? Because in many cases, we're talking about 460 or so teachers, of which that's roughly a quarter of our teaching staff, right? That decision has already been made for the other 1,200, right? So we have a limited time as a district to make a very important decision. And if the idea is you have to, like, that's not the standard that the state law contemplates that other districts follow. And again,
right. And I don't mean to minimize the concerns of, you know, especially principals having to like work with people and know like who they see as sort of a good fit for their school and not necessarily a good fit for their school. But I just think that that's maybe a different kind of determination than, you know, we're not saying, can the district find a teacher who's a better fit for this position? It's saying, can we find a teacher who's better qualified? So I think, yeah. So I think I have a little bit of concern about that. But also, if somebody's not a great fit in a particular school, maybe they'd be a fantastic fit at a school down the street.
Sure. So I'd say two things.
Yeah.
I just want to be when we say fit, it is not just, it is absolutely not a principal saying, I don't like this person. They're not like, there is evidence of this person's been absent 15 or more times. You know, there are objective measures here that are looked at.
Yeah.
Again, to that we only have a limited opportunity to make as a district. And to be honest, like the burden is not on the district to say, this is the poorest performing person that we found. We've only had a limited time to observe this person, and we have to make a very important decision. Let's use as much information as we can. So I just want to be careful when we say fit, because fit can sometimes be a code for like, oh, we don't like, it's absolutely not that in the decision-making process. And that's part of what the screening process, and the ones that make it through are those that have passed the rigor of our legal team, our principal supervisors, and our HR team.
Well, and so I guess my concern just about sort of not knowing the context of what the people who, you know, if somebody missed 15 school days, is that how far from, how many standard deviations from the average is that? You know what I mean? Like, so that's the sort of thing I might want to know if I were in the position of having to make that call, which I'm not, but, you know, and I appreciate that I'm not, so it's easy for me to you know, poke holes. Yeah, so I think that was my main question. I'm going to stop talking because I feel like other people probably want to talk also.
Chairman Jones.
Thank you. My question is just, if, how has changed in the past, and like what is some of the reasoning behind some of those changes, if there's been any changes?
I think what we've done more so over the last couple of years is actually build out for the administrators a documentation process. So starting at the inception of the school year, these are the forms that we're providing you, and this is what you're ultimately going to have to determine. So this is what we expect by way of the training. This is what we expect you to provide by way of evidence to support your determination. So if you don't have the evidence and you're not providing, the narrative that supports your determination, it's not going to be something that's going to pass muster upon review. So the process of educating administrators has become more robust. The process of telling them you need to provide documentation, and the documentation we've required has become much more significant than what was formerly required. So it's become more of a documented process than, what was traditionally a little bit less so, and more of like a conversation with the principal about, hey, well, tell us why you think this person shouldn't be granted tenure, or won't be successful over the next 20 years or so.
Jay Fonts.
So I understand that there are like support programs in place for teachers, librarians, educators. When they are, is it fair to say that if they don't finish those, like if they're supposed to get 15 sessions or they're supposed to get a certain amount, if they are not given those sessions due to the district money or whatever, is it fair, in your opinion, to non-renew these teachers if they weren't given the adequate support that the contract said they'd get? Like,
I mean, to be direct, my answer would be fair to who? Fair to the students that will be with the teacher in the coming years, or fair to the teacher? No. Just like, hear me out.
No, I'm listening.
So our peer assistance and review, which was mentioned earlier, is a part of our PTU contract with the Providence Teachers Union. It's a collaborative joint labor management program that uses teaching staff to support and provide coaching to teachers. It is explicitly for tenured teachers who are rated developing. That typically means the lowest of all our evaluated teachers, roughly, I think it's the lower of 9%, 10% of tenured teachers. At times, it is also offered if there is additional availability to probationary teachers. So, and those are the teachers we're talking about here. So to say, hey, we offered you additional coaching that we actually aren't required to, but we wanted to offer you. You got 8 sessions and you didn't get 15. That somehow, even if you aren't progressing, it is on the district to retain you for a future year. Like, I disagree with the fairness argument, because I think, we have to make a decision about what is in the best interest of an educator who's going to be in front of a student for a number of years. And so that is the standard that we're looking to.
so when I say fair, I mean fair to the teachers and fair to the students. We heard, like we've said, I mean, never mind, not going into personal stuff. We'll save that for executive session. Thank you for that answer. My next question is, do educators have full access to like their evaluation once they are non-renewed? Like, they can see the reasons why, they're told explicitly, clearly, like, these are the reasons why you were non-renewed? Or is it just like, you're not being non-renewed?
So when you say evaluation,
Yeah.
so evaluation within our construct has a very specific meaning. So they have access to all the evaluative documents, their annual evaluation that's provided for by statute. As it relates to the documents themselves, generally no. Part of the conversation, and part of what we try to do with administrators, is coach them through having conversations with teachers when it comes to non-renewal determinations. And frankly, some are better at it than others. Especially some of your newer ones. It's an uncomfortable process. Just anybody that you're having an exit conversation with is a very uncomfortable conversation. But what we try to encourage them to do is to have continuing conversations with them about, this is what I'm not seeing, this is what I'm looking to see, and if it doesn't happen, I have to make a determination. Frankly, that sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. Ultimately, as Zach said, we have to make a determination as to what to do, whether to grant you a 25, potentially 30-year career in Providence based upon the information that we have. And, in terms of the documentation that's provided to us, generally that documentation is not provided to the teacher. It's not provided to the teacher at the outset. If there's an appeal, if there's a challenge, then that documentation is provided to the teacher as part of discovery in support of that appeal of the non-renewal decision. But the rationale, the internal documentation that we rely upon is our work product for making the decision. So until such time as there is an actual potential case, that's not information that the teacher has. The information they have is really what's communicated to them either during the course of the initial conversation with the principal or subsequently when, we have a conversation with them prior to, an actual hearing.
Thank you for that. And I love that we've given autonomy to principals to kind of do that work. But I worry a little when you say some principals are good at having that conversation, some are not, because at the end of the day, it's their responsibility to be able to have those conversations with their staff, and our educators deserve that. And I know that's not on you, but I just wanted to go on record saying that that should be something that all of our administrators, head of schools should be good at, because our educators, whether they're being renewed or not, deserve like clear and like, yeah, like a clear, like this is why it was made. And yeah, so, okay. And then lastly, sorry, how has these non-renewals, how do you feel they might affect class sizes, student support, overall staffing for the upcoming year? Hearing that, we have so many vacancies and we're non-renewing teachers who I have heard great, phenomenal testimony of what they're doing. So, whatever, but like, can you answer that? Like, how are class sizes, student support, overall staffing in general gonna be handled for next year?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. So, class size. So, a non-renewal is different than a position being cut or closed. So, if you imagine if there's an English teacher who is non-renewed, it is very likely that that position will then be vacant, and then they will hire someone in their place. So, it is not the same as, hey, we have to deal with one. The school had 8 English teachers. We're non-renewing now. They have 7. They would actually still have those 8 positions, and they would be hiring for that open position that was non-renewed.
Not a follow-up, but so we're having a hard time hiring though. So like, I guess that's where I'm having a gap in understanding of, but yeah, I guess executive session.
If I can share just a quick response to that, which is, it is true that there are areas where we have a need as a district. It's not true for all areas. So there are a number of areas. So elementary and several other areas are not. It's typically in special education, math, and there are non-renewals in those areas. So it's not to say that we don't have non-renewals in those areas. I will say it's important to note that, again, these are long-term decisions. And so before we make that commitment, we need to weigh hey, you have a vacancy. And that's an honest, I think, discussion principals have with us, with their leadership team of, hey, I'm not sure about this because I may have a vacancy, but I'm really concerned about this person staying with us. And so the ones that go forward are where the kind of evidence tips in the favor of, well, you might have a vacancy to start, though hopefully you'll fill it, but we feel concerned enough that we need to make this decision about non-renewal.
Really quick before I let someone else go. So when teachers are non-renewed, so just for clarity, because you could have already said it, are they non-renewed and they have the reasons why, or are they just non-renewed without a reason or without a?
Yeah, so I'll Council Ruggiero can correct me. So as teachers, they are evaluated each year. They will have access to their evaluation. In terms of their non-renewal, it doesn't say here are the 6 reasons you're non-renewed. It says you're being non-renewed. The letter says because of we believe we can find a more qualified teacher. If there is a further litigation appeal, then that is typically offered as evidence into that arbitration. But oftentimes our principals are having conversations with people throughout, leading up to that. But to clearly answer your question is they don't get a letter that says here are the six areas we have concerns about.
Generally, Tyrell, Melissa, Night Jean, you guys know, you've been on this board for long enough. What typically when we present cases for non-renewal, we're usually able to resolve most of them prior to them ever reaching the board. So though we traditionally have 17, 20 during the period of intervention cases for non-renewal, usually there's only a handful, if that, by the time we actually come potentially before the board. And that's because during the course of that, we're able to explain like, well, these were the observations of the principal, and this was what led to the non-renewal recommendation. And that conversation is led initially by the principal during the time that they hand them the non-renewal letter. So usually, there's a time in which there's an understanding that's kind of collectively reached as to what the rationale is before there's ever any type of appeal or case that comes before the body.
Is that common practice? Like, do other districts do the same, or do other districts?
It's very far from common practice as it relates to any other district in my experience, and perhaps Sarah can correct me in her experience, but usually it's the superintendent handing a list. This is the teachers that I intend to non-renew. The board votes on the list. There's no individual assessment done by the board of any of the individuals. There's the superintendent making a representation and the board acting on that representation to issue the statement of cause.
On the consent agenda. So like when a list of contracts, you vote, like it is a list of names that the board votes on. So just when you say it's different here, it is much more
robust here. I mean, and then in terms of, when the teacher actually has the evidence that the district has compiled to support the good faith belief that they can find a more qualified teacher, that happens in a subsequent legal proceeding, usually in most other districts, after the board already votes on the issuance of the statement of cause on the consent agenda.
So the teachers getting non-renewal would typically not have that information before. Okay.
And they don't have the documentation in my experience, and Sarah can of course correct me if I'm wrong in her experience, but what they usually have is some indication, and what they should have in the interest of all fairness is some indication from the principal regarding these are the documented performance deficiencies that I've observed. And I'm asking you or telling you that if you fail to correct these, this is going to be something that will lead me to potentially non-renew you.
All right, and I would say, and I'll go to some of the other members. I would say probably, I think with me, and as it pertains to some of these non-renewals, some of these individuals that I know personally have, been vocal in the community, have, advocated for things that may have not been popular or may have not made people happy. And I think when we talk about, and I'm not going to go deep into it, Charlie, but I would just say, I think when the community came out and said what they said, it was more along those lines of why people felt the way they felt. We can have a conversation more in executive session. I don't want to tap too deep into it or say anything on the record that could be used, but I think that kind of was some of the concerns that a lot of people had.
All I'll say to that, Mr. President, is simply if any of that was detailed in the rationale that's provided by the administrators for the non-renewal recommendation, then that would have been something that I would not allow to pass. Because if you're engaged in protected speech or you're engaged in concerted activity, and that's what leads to the basis of the rationale for the administrator to recommend non-renewal, that's exactly the reason that we do the review that we do, to ensure that is not the case.
Okay. Any other questions? Ms. Severio?
It's just a clarification because I understand once we get to this part, once the district gets these recommendations, but I've heard a couple of times, and maybe I'm misunderstanding it, is that it is up to the principal whether they give the teachers like some sort of warning that they're going to potentially be non-renewed, or is there like a policy or a practice put in place that there's like, you're on a probationary period, you might get non-renewed, you have these certain like things that you need to improve on?
So I can start, and my colleagues can correct me. So there are a couple things to highlight there. So probationary teachers are based in statute, so it's not something we as a district get to determine. It is someone who is in their first 3 years of employment with us. So that is when we say probationary teacher, what defines it. Not, we can't kind of deem someone probationary because that's a period deemed by the state. Every year in our first few years of employment, teachers are on cycle. So in further years out, people might be evaluated every 2 or every 3 years, but in the first few years, people are evaluated every year. In certain cases, people, in addition to being evaluated, might be on a performance improvement plan. That is, if a supervisor sees a specific area of growth, that they'll set a plan for working on that teacher with growth. That doesn't happen in all cases, but in some cases it does. In terms of the principal's role, their role is in cases of they don't necessarily issue a warning. They might have a conversation, or they might have indicate that the person's on a performance improvement plan. But it is the principal who makes a recommendation to non-renewal that is reviewed by their supervisor, HR, and legal before the ultimate recommendation goes to the superintendent.
And so, like a PIP plan, is that's like is there a reason why this is not a policy that like before you get a non-renewal you put on a PIP plan?
I don't know if you would want to chime in. I mean, I think
there's a lot of resources and a lot of time and effort and energy that goes into managing employees, especially managing employees that are on a performance improvement plan. So really, I think our administrators are tasked with doing so much, right? And they're pulled in 1,000 different directions. So I think for purposes of, when we're looking in terms of legal compliance, we're looking at the deferential standard that's provided for non-renewals. And we're looking at just some fairness to the process where you can say, like, I need some reasonable rationale, and I expect that you communicated that reasonable rationale to the employee, rather than going through a process by which you're potentially monitoring, providing them additional coaching. Usually those performance improvement plans, it's my recommendation that those are really restricted to tenured teachers who you are trying to get to perform up to task, because you don't have the potential to non-renew them under a deferential standard before they become a performance-based concern. So, I think my position would be the performance improvement plans should largely be, because they're usually multiple, they're usually longer than 6 months. It's usually like a year-long process. If you're spending that much time, that much energy, and that much resources onto someone that you could otherwise just simply, have a candid conversation with and non-renew, I think it's a better use of the district's resources to do that.
And then my second question is in regards to, again, before we get it in the district, we look at the reviews that are done in schools. And a lot of what we heard of feedback is that teachers, librarians, personnel, they're getting reviewed by people who don't even do that job. And so how are we positive that these reviews are reflective of what, and it's not to say that the principal is doesn't know what they're doing, but as you said, the principal does so many other things during the day. And so do they have time to accurately review a teacher's performance?
I mean, they have to. I mean, I think that's their job as the building leader, is to evaluate everyone in their building. And it's true, obviously, we heard the example of librarian, but it could be true if you're you were an English teacher and you became and you become a principal and you have to supervise a math teacher. Like in any of these cases, there are going to be areas where you don't have deep, in particular, like content expertise, but you might, pedagogy as a principal, you can look at the standards. And oftentimes we find if it is something that is very unique or very far afield, they might reach out to a colleague in central office who can speak to that. But again, I would think of this in two ways, which is one, enough to supervise and evaluate your staff in your building, but we aren't, it's not that you have 100 people and you're trying to identify the difference between number 50 and 51 in terms of performance. You are, like, in this case, you're probably identifying someone who is at in your perspective as a supervisor on the lowest 25%. So it's not about how exact, in terms of the non-renewal, it is making sure you as a supervisor, you as someone who understands education and runs a building, knows enough, I think, to make the determination, even if you aren't the content expert in that person's area.
Really quick, not to lose my train of thought. Chairwoman had said one thing, I think it was about the PIP. So in order to get that tenure, they have to meet 3 years?
3 years, that's correct.
So I think it could be beneficial. There's always room to grow. It would be beneficial if these teachers that, that are going to be non-renewed have some kind of warning or some kind of, trial period to find out whether they're, on progress, to meet that tenure or not. I think that 3 years with the PIP, you know, I think 3 years in saying, we don't provide a PIP and we list the reasons why, like, hey, there's a lot going on and it's too much for the principal. I don't see that as something solid or a solid excuse, but I would say maybe not necessarily a PIP, but there has to be some kind of plan in place to inform some of these teachers so they're not caught off guard, because teachers can be thinking that they are doing, an amazing job, and then out of nowhere they're getting a letter saying that they're being non-renewed. I'm just saying, for transparency reasons, is there a way where there can be some kind of, what is it, framework, structure, policy that just says, midway through whether our new teachers are going to be tenured, there is some kind of process to be reviewed on whether they're on pace to be tenured or not?
I mean, we could take that under consideration. I would reiterate what Councilor Ruggiero said, which is the standard here is low, and so when you artificially add requirements above that, like the standard kind of doesn't mean anything at a certain point. You then might as well treat everyone as if they've reached tenure, and this is, again, you have to make decisions based on some limited information. I also think it's important just to say, like, I can't say this is universally true, but I don't think it's correct, the assumption that, like, everyone's surprised, no one has warning. There aren't, like, that happens constantly. And so is it universally true? Have there been cases where someone might not have communicated or someone was surprised? I'm sure that has happened, but it is frequently our supervisors they have started the year evaluation conferences, and so they are having those conversations with many of their staff. So to say that, so I would just make sure that it's clear that our supervisors are often having those conversations that we're talking about. And two, when we add more, like Charlie mentioned, we already have kind of a more rigorous process than the statute requires. Raising that even higher, there are consequences to that I think might be problematic as well. But I'm not arguing with
Absolutely
about having clear communication and not surprising people. Like,
No, absolutely.
no arguments there. No arguments there.
And we have a statute that is, through the state. And when we look at Providence is the largest school district in Rhode Island. It's 95% or could be higher of color. I just want to make sure that there's structures in place, even if we have to go above and beyond, that are in place where teachers are in the classroom teaching Black and brown students. I don't want our classes sort of not being taught, and having students not having certified teachers. I think that's just more of what my concern is overall than even with the whole, I just want to make sure our classrooms are staffed. And if we have to make sure that there's a proper process to evaluate the teachers, I really just want to make sure that that's in place. If that's us going above and beyond, we have to make sure we're the largest school district. And like I said, we are 95%, have students of color. So that's any other questions? Ms. Hughes, she needs the mic.
Thank you for this presentation. This is very helpful to me and hopefully also to our community. My first short question is, when I look at, I know you're not showing them here, we have some appendices within this presentation that the board has reviewed that sort of shows the documentation that would be used and some of the criteria that are looked at, or the factors. Is that list or that general list shared in advance with probationary teachers? Would they all know sort of the general framework there of what principals might be considering in the process?
Yeah, I will start, and maybe Mr. James can chime in. But I think those documentation is very much aligned to the teacher evaluation standards. So it talks about the different standards of instruction, classroom management, professionalism. And so many of those criteria that you'll see are actually aligned to that. So it should be one and the same with how kind of their expectations as a teacher. Would you add anything?
That's helpful to understand. I think any issue that we ever talk about here at the school board comes down to communication and transparency. And we all, the board included, can always continue to strive to get better at that. I do want to try to just make a distinction as well. Like, I think it's been really moving to hear from community members, from some of the affected educators as in this current cycle, as well as community members in general. But I do want to make a distinction between hearing public comment and hearing evidence or information that has to do with a legal case. And so I just want to share from my perspective. I want to share with my colleagues that, again, I don't think we have information. We're not discussing particulars tonight, and I think we're teetering on the edge a little bit here. My concern is that the way that we're framing this conversation is making an assumption that a process wasn't followed before we're actually learning about what that process was. And I would like to suggest that if folks have further questions or concerns, that we request at our next meeting to have an executive session specifically around how this process went down, if that's an acceptable or appropriate thing to do. I think we can't make assumptions based on public comment because we haven't noticed to the entire community or an entire affected group that that's what we're talking about. And I just want to reiterate that again. Like, it is moving and important to hear from community members. And also, that's not the same as like having evidence provided to us about what a process was or was not.
Superintendent.
So just one of the things I want to remind everyone: when there is a process, when you follow the process, there is constant communication when you're going into assess or evaluate a teacher. There's constant communication. You have your beginning of year, your mid-year, your end of year conversations. You go in and you say, these are the areas that I'm seeing, these are the areas that I'm not seeing, this is what I would like to see. And then there's an open conversation that's constantly going. It's not just a one-time come into your classroom snapshot. There is constant communication as to what you're looking at, what you're finding, what are the evidence. And that conversation happens with every teacher. As an administrator, you have that conversation with every teacher as you're evaluating. Now, keep in mind that the evaluation is a 3-year evaluation for new teachers. 3 years consecutively. After you finish those 3 years, then there's a process that you have an off year. So you can, the process will go, if you're highly qualified, you get every 2 years or every 3 years, depending on what that is. But it's a process of constant communication and going through what the standards are. Each teacher or each administrator is going through each of the standards, each of the rubrics, and said, this is what we're looking for. This is the difference between a 1, 2, 3, 4. This is what you're looking. If you're hitting a 4, this is what you're going to find in this area. So it's broken down to the minute aspect of saying, this is what is being looked for, this is where you at, this is what you can do. In the process itself, in the rubric itself, explains what the teacher needs to do to move from a developing to highly effective. It'll go right through it. And then at the end of the 3, beginning, middle, end, and the visits and the conversations, because this is like, once again, it's not just a one-time conversation, it's multiple conversations. Then that's when at the end you get a score, and that's that score that everyone's talking about. But it's not just about the score, it's about the constant communication. So it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone at the end, because those conversations are constantly being had.
Secretary Font.
I just want to be very clear. I'm not here making assumptions about any process. I'm here asking clarifying questions that the community has asked me to ask and that have come up for me. I'm not making assumptions that there was any discriminatory or unfair process done. I just want to be clear that I am asking clarifying questions because that is my job. The other thing is, so you said that the evaluation process is very similar to what like they would receive about like, this is what you're being evaluated on. When does the first evaluation happen for an educator?
In their first year. So Herman, maybe you could talk the process a little more.
So as you look at the timeline, you will see that we begin the evaluation process in October. So the beginning of the school year, you have to get into the school, get adjusted and acclimated to start the new school year. But the evaluation process starts in October. And to the superintendent's point, that principal is certainly having conversations with that educator, all educators, about their student learning outcomes. What are the expectations for that classroom? And those things are happening at the beginning of the school year. Then the principal, as the instructional leader, goes into that classroom and begin the observation process. And that first observation may just be a checklist, just to say, hey, I want to check on how things are going in that second month of the school year, and provide some feedback to that teacher just by visiting that classroom, just doing a class visit. And then then the next step is that they will have a conference with that teacher and then start to talk about observations, official observations that they will go into the classroom and do. And those observations are planned. And that teacher knows exactly what it is that they're expected to do through that observation. And then they have an observation post-conference where they talk about the observation. What are some things that the instructional leader, the principal, saw during that observation? What are some things that you need to improve on? So it's not a surprise to anyone as to where you need to work and what those areas are that you need to improve. So that process continues throughout the year. As the superintendent, we have a mid-year evaluation, and then we also have additional observations, and then at the end of the year we have a final evaluation, but that doesn't happen until June.
Thank you for going in detail explaining that. I know you had said it before. I guess I asked that question because I wonder if it would be helpful for teachers before school even starts, during that planning time, like when they're brand new to a district, like these are the things you will be evaluated on in 2 months. Like, can we is that possible to do for our teachers?
Yeah, so that happens when we've been doing induction over the summer
Okay.
for many of our new teachers. So if you're in your second or third year, I don't think you may have it optional, but for those new teachers, we are
In the summer.
correcting them in the summer before they start. There's a lot that they need to get up to speed on their curriculum, all that stuff. But evaluation is one of the topics.
Okay, and just one last comment from me. I apologize. Thank you for your patience. For me, I come from community. Like, I don't come from politics. This isn't my realm. I'm very much community. And so in community, like, we hold our leaders and our elders like at a high standard. Like, it's their job to make sure anyone who's following them, anyone who's under them, is set up to succeed. And so I heard you say that these programs are for tenured teachers, but you have offered them to probationary teachers. And I wonder if there are probationary teacher programs to help and support and help them become better educators, because in the first year and the second year of any career that's new, they're going to need that support. And I feel as if we're going to be a district who supports our educators, we need to do a little more, like, in policy that says we're going to support or don't take new teachers, because it almost feels like we're setting them up to fail if we're not having the patience to kind of help them succeed.
Superintendent.
So there are multiple things, we're talking about evaluation, but we also got to think about the professional development that's going on weekly. They have the common planning time, they have the learning walks, the district learning walks, they have the learning walks, so they have targeted areas where they're going to be looking for when we do this. So there's a constant communication. I know you can't mix both, which is one is your personal evaluation versus the professional development they say, but that professional development is happening with the coaches in the building, that professional development is happening with the principal in the building, that professional development sometimes they're tied up with more experienced teachers to work and support those teachers. So once again, it's a lot of communication that's going on. There's a lot of support that's supposed to be going on. That's, you turn around and you want to make sure that we're looking at that, because when you do common planning time, that's preparing up. That's not just preparing that one teacher, it's preparing everyone in that building, how we as a building are going to be moving or addressing certain issues by grade level, right? So that's one thing. But then that's another kind of support that's given to them. But as I said, when we do the actual evaluation, there is constantly evaluations. You go through each one of those rubric, what each one of those rubric means. How do you move from one to the other? You look for certain keywords that says, hey, in level 1, this is what this is at. You're developing. This is what we're seeing. In next level, this is what we're going to see. highly effective, this is what you're going to see. So there's different words within each one of those columns, in each one of those rubrics that's going to show you how you move forward. And those conversations are had. And then as an evaluator, you go in and you're going to take holistically what do you, the room looks like. Then you're going to go in and say, hey, I saw all these great things, but did you ever think about this? So that's the coaching when you're coming in and having that conversation and those visits that you're having once you're in the classroom, and then that constant feedback.
I also want to add that we have the new teacher induction. So that new teacher induction program certainly supports all of our teachers in year 1, year 2. We have monthly professional development opportunities for all of our new teachers. We provide what we call teacher ambassadors, and those are mentors that are in the schools that support all of our new teachers. So we do have those supports for those probationary non-tenured teachers within our district.
Really quick as well. So, you probably already answered this. Forgive me if I'm just, I just want to be clear. So when they have the check-ins with their direct supervisors, those check-ins is just word of mouth. It's not like documented. Like you get what I'm saying?
Herman can correct me. I mean, as part of the evaluation process, there is a formal meeting with documentation. So can you share more, Herman, about?
Sure. So there are informal and formal, right? So when we have informal observations, as I indicated before, there may be a checklist. There may be just a checklist where that principal may go in and check some items off and provide that feedback to the educator. So that's something that's certainly done in writing and documented in writing. And then you have the formal observations where it's certainly done and is all documented, and there's a form, et cetera, where we provide that feedback to the teachers.
Okay. Does any of the members have any other questions? With there being none, thank you so much. All right. Charlie, can you go back to the mic for me, please? So the next item we have is executive session. I think first I should ask, does the board feel strongly about entering into executive session after the presentation, or is there?
I would just also note, for purposes of this notice for executive session, we cannot discuss the specifics regarding any particular case or any particular teacher's job performance, as they have not been notified that their job performance will be discussed tonight, either in executive session or open session. So this notice is a general notice specific to legal standards and potential litigation. So if the board's intention is to speak about specific individuals, I just want you to be aware that that's not something we could engage in tonight because they have not received the required statutory notice.
Are we able to say next week? Are we able to next month? Are we able to send off notices and still have that discussion, and they know that we are discussing some of their performances to get more information?
Yes, you would be able to do that.
Okay. Motion has been made to table the executive session 11.1 until our very next meeting. And also, I'm going to add to that if I can. Am I able to add to it? Am I able to add to that motion and send notices to the teachers? Go ahead.
No, yes.
Okay, yep.
I was
And
just gonna
send
say yes.
notices to the teachers that we'll be discussing their job performance.
All teachers?
No, the 17, all 17.
All 17 teachers.
Really quick. So I'm so sorry. There's been a motion made by Chairman Jones, seconded by Mr. Mahigable. Any discussion?
I had actually
Okay, go ahead.
two
Dr. Williamson.
questions before. Was there anything else? Was there some other pending litigation or something that you wanted to talk to us about tonight?
No, the litigation would have been specific to the concerns regarding the non. It was an opportunity, a placeholder for the board to speak specifically about the legal standard associated with the non-renewal, which we've basically discussed already, and any potential litigation that could ensue.
Okay. And the other question is, if we were to have an executive session and we were going to be discussing individual teachers' performance, it wouldn't be like a group activity, right? It would have to be done individually by
We would
a
sequester.
separate executive session for each.
There would be one
person.
executive session. We would escort people in and out for
Okay.
purposes of their
And we
individual
won't be able to take
conversation.
action. No action at all. Correct.
When you say action, I guess I would query
It-
what
it's just.
action you
I'm
could
so sorry.
possibly
It's
take.
just a listening. Like we're listening.
Essentially, you're identifying, you're discussing someone's job performance. There wouldn't really be an action that you're legally authorized to take
Got
given
it.
the advisory capacity
Got it.
of the board as it relates to personnel decisions.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Dr. Williamson, you have one other question?
Yeah, I'm not so I think we've already voted on a resolution asking the superintendent and the commissioner to review this and to get back to us with presumably with some more information or at least to give us some additional assurances that they've taken a second look and determined that whatever that process, we don't have any control over what happens as a result of that request. But I feel like that's probably as much as we maybe should be doing at the moment, because I don't really feel like I don't really want to get into the territory where we're like grilling individual educators about their performance or having to air those questions here. I don't know that that's really appropriate.
Absolutely. I think I would say really quick. I think it could be a benefit for new members to see how that process probably looks. Go ahead. You want to?
Someone mentioned from the crowd there is an appeal process, and really that is, as I mentioned before, the appropriate vehicle for which the individual consideration is given to the recommendation, whether it was arbitrary or capricious or supported. That is really the appropriate vehicle for the consideration of that evidence.
Absolutely. I think, but I would say, I think due to the temperature of our last meeting, due to the temperature of today's meeting, I think that a lot of these educators, would feel comfortable speaking directly to the board about how they feel. I don't want to waste people's time as well and say, hey, we're reviewing them and we can't take any action. But I think it could be beneficial for the board to, at least get the district side and not only the district side, but also the teacher's side on this process. We've already taken action, but I think that it could be beneficial to just have the information as a board. That's just me personally. I'm just one person. Go ahead, Ms. Severio. And Ms. Hughes actually. Yeah, I'm so sorry. Ms. Hughes and Ms. Severio.
I think Dr. Williamson already asked my main question, which was whether or not we had other items specifically scheduled to be discussed in tonight's executive session. I'll just leave it at that. I'll pass it to Ms. Severio.
To be clear, this executive session of us listening to this is not the appeals process. So they would have to go through a separate appeals process for that.
Correct.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure it was clear.
Yes, Secretary.
I just wanted to go on the record. This isn't to you, but just to go on the record. I had sent an email on March 3rd specifically asking for the evaluation process of those 17 educators to Mr. Montanez and Drew, who works with the commissioner. And I was told that those, I'll be told next steps on that. That was March 3rd. I'm a little disappointed that, notice wasn't given to the teachers before this meeting so that we could have that conversation in executive session this month and give some kind of comfort to the educators that are going through this. So, yeah, I guess just the responsiveness is a little slow for me.
Any other questions? So there's been a motion made to send notices to the teachers that will discuss their job performance and discuss that during next month's business meeting. There was a motion made by Chairman Jones, seconded by Chairman Mahagable. There was a discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Any abstentions? Dr. Williamson abstained. Any other abstentions? Ms. Hughes also abstained. Right, 2 abstentions. The motion passes. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting on tonight? All right, there's been a motion made by Secretary Font, seconded by Chairman Jones. All in favor signify by, any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. All right, have a good day. Well, night, evening.